Chapter 561. Legend had it that the Nether River Patriarch was the founder of the Indian deity system under the primitive deity system. When the world was created, Pangu died of exhaustion. A puddle of blood between his eyebrows turned into the Nether Blood Sea, which gave birth to the Nether River Patriarch. The Nether River Patriarch was the desolate level Yuan Ko, who appeared in the third year after the apocalypse. He attacked for the first time during the siege of Old Yin Jing City, turning over 1,000 sword-bearers and 3 million civilians into the Azure tribe. Kanzu could not defeat him in battle. In the end, he borrowed his good friend Zhang Yuanzi's innate spiritual treasure Earthly Tome to escape from Old Yin Jing City with the remaining 3,000 sword-bearers and 300,000 civilians. Since then, Old Yin Jing City had become the Nether Blood Sea. The human race hid between the gaps of the dimensions to preserve humanity. The Nether River Patriarch rarely fought. He always used the Azure tribe he created as fighters. With the innate spiritual treasure Yuan II and the Avicii II swords as his foundation, he was extremely powerful. He was once considered the most powerful Yuan Ko in the world. After Kanzu became an Emperor Sword level swordbearer, he once tried to recover Old Yin Jing City and build it into the first base city of a human race. It was a pity that Kanzu had set up a killing formation 3 times in an attempt to kill the Nether River Patriarch. However, it was all because of the Yuan II and the Avicii II swords' power. They were equivalent to an Emperor Sword Lady. In addition, the Nether River Patriarch had the power of the desolate level Yuan Ko. The two of them together were equivalent to 2 Emperor Sword level swordbearers. Although Kanzu's power was outstanding and it was normal for him to fight someone of a higher level, the Nether River Patriarch had made up his mind to escape. Hence, all 3 killing formations had failed. Kanzu was worried about this. He went to talk to his good friend Jin Yuanzi to ask for advice on how to kill the Nether River Patriarch. Jin Yuanzi replied, if he wanted to defeat the Nether River Patriarch, he had to defeat his Yuan II and the Avicii II swords. Apart from the 4 celestial exterminating swords, only the Yuan II and the Avicii II swords could defeat the Nether River Patriarch. The opportunity for the 4 immortal exterminating swords had yet to arrive. They would only appear in the world after 1,000 years. Therefore, he still had to think of a way to get his hands on the Yuan II and Avicii swords. Kanzu did not understand. The Nether River Patriarch had refined the Yuan II and Avicii swords, and no one else could use them apart from him. Even if he managed to steal it, it would be useless. It was a terrible idea. Zhang Yuanzi waved his hand and said, I'm not talking about the Yuan II and Avicii swords in Nether River Patriarch's hands. Those 2 swords were brought from our world and didn't originally exist in this world. The 2 swords, Yuan II and Avicii, still exist in this world. They are in the endless magma beneath the earth, and the Nether River Patriarch's defeat is certain if you can find them. It was impossible for 2 identical things to exist in the world. 2 Yuan II axes and Avicii. One of them must be real, and the other must be fake. When the fake thing met the real thing, it would naturally be destroyed in an instant, just like a punctured soap bubble. In your world, the Yuan II and Avicii swords in Nether River Patriarch's hands are fake. Primordial spiritual treasures can only be used after being refined by one's own primordial spirit, just like the synchronization of the sword-bearers. The Nether River Patriarch's primordial spirit has been integrated with the Yuan II and Avicii swords. Once the 2 swords are pierced, the Nether River Patriarch's primordial spirit will be destroyed as well. Without his primordial spirit, what difference is there between him and a child on the street? You only need to find the real Yuan II and Avicii swords, and you don't need to synchronize them. As long as you pierce them into Nether River Patriarch's body, the primordial spirit of Nether River Patriarch that had refined the Yuan II and Avicii swords will naturally collapse. Then, killing the Nether River Patriarch will be as easy as pie. After receiving Xinyuanzi's hint, the Sword Master spent about 1 year searching in the underground magma. Finally, he found the real bodies of the legendary Yuan II and Avicii swords. Therefore, Kanzu began his 4th encirclement on the Nether River Patriarch. Everything went smoothly at first, and the Nether River Patriarch was soon surrounded. Just when the Nether River Patriarch wanted to escape with the UN2 and Avicii swords like before, Kinzu conveniently took out the real UN2 and Avicii swords. The Nether River Patriarch sensed the presence of the real UN2 and Avicii swords, which frightened him. He understood Kinzu's intention, so he made a prompt decision to burn half of his primordial spirit, which doubled his strength in a short time. Then, he broke through the formation at an extremely fast speed and escaped. Kinzu could not even touch him. Only then did he escape with his life from the real UN2 and Avicii swords. After that, the Nether River Patriarch disappeared without a trace, and the Ashura tribesmen were all killed by humans. It was not until the creation deity was born that the Nether River Patriarch reappeared. This time, the Nether River Patriarch and the other two desolate-level Yuan-Ko tried to use the power of the creation deity to restore half of their primordial spirit. However, under the siege of Kinzu and the half-day Jindi, they detonated the power of the creation deity and disappeared with Kinzu. In fact, the information on the Nether River Patriarch was rather long. It could be written for about 3 chapters, and a day's worth of updates will be finished just like that. Therefore, this was only a simplified version. Only the part that Gohan was interested in was written. It was from this part that Gohan found the way to defeat the Nether River Patriarch. It was obvious that the Nether River Patriarch had a fatal weakness. He was afraid of the real Yuan-2 and Abi swords. Judging from the fact that he had absorbed the power of Yuan-Ko crazily after his rebirth, the Nether River Patriarch's strength had not increased in the past 1,000 years. Instead, it had weakened a lot. He needed the power of an ordinary Yuan-Ko to recover. In that case, he would not be able to withstand the attack of the real Yuan-2 and Abi swords again. As long as the Yuan-2 and Abi sword were stabbed into the Nether River Patriarch's body, he would not be able to harm Yuzhong City even if he did not die. So the question was, where are the real Yuan-2 and Abi swords? I don't know if everyone remembers the story about Jitian Jindi. At the peak of Sanxing Mountain, the immortal sword-rank swordsman, Jitian, wielded the Yuan Killer Sword, and another immortal sword-rank swordsman wielded the Avicii Sword. In the end, I Ching emerged victorious and ascended to the throne, becoming the famous Jitian Sword Emperor. On its own, the Yuan-2 and Abi swords were only an immortal sword-level sword mistress, but together, they were Emperor Sword-level sword mistresses. Therefore, Jitian Jindi's Emperor sword-level sword mistresses were the Yuan-2 and Abi swords. As a city built by Jitian Jindi, the Yuan-2 and Abi swords were naturally left behind after Jitian Jindi ascended. They became the treasures of Yuzhong City's sword garret and were passed down from generation to generation. Including Jitian, there were a total of 4 swordsmen who coordinated the Yuan-2 and Abi swords at the same time and became emperors. Ever since Terminus Jindi, there was no other Jindi who relied on the Yuan-2 and Abi swords to ascend. The 2 swords have been hidden in the 6th floor of Sword Garret. Now, you should have guessed where the Yuan-2 and Abi swords are, right? That's right, the 2 swords were in Gohan's dimensional pouch. At this moment, Gohan suddenly began to believe in the so-called fate. Yuzhong City was not fated to die, nor was humanity. The Yuan-2 and Abi swords were in Gohan's hands. Gohan did not need to search for the 2 swords in the underground magma, like Kinzu did. Gohan only needed to find a way to send the swords into the body of the River Styx Patriarch. What was fate? This was fate. With this fate, Yuzhong City would not die. At the thought of this, Gohan was very excited. The little bit of despair he had before was thrown to the back of his mind, and all he could think about was how to send the Yuan-2 and Abi swords into the body of the River Styx Patriarch. The first problem he had to solve was the problem of flying. At this moment, the River Styx Patriarch was floating in the air. If Gohan wanted to get close to him and send the 2 swords into the body of the River Styx Patriarch, he had to fly up and not touch the ground. Otherwise, he would be instantly wrapped in blood and become the River Styx Patriarch's Ashura. However, Gohan could not fly. Only spirit sword bearers could master the ability to fly. Otherwise, Gahan would not have been trapped underground and had to rely on Lu Lei's help to fly up. The second problem he had to solve was the problem of speed. Gahan only had one chance. The River Styx Patriarch had experienced the disaster of the Yuan II and Abi swords once. Once bitten, twice shy. Once the Yuan II and Abi sword were taken out, the River Styx Patriarch's first reaction would be to run. And when he came to his senses, he would have 1,000 ways to kill Gahan. Therefore, Gahan had to stab the Yuan II and Abi swords into it the moment he took them out of the dimensional brocade pouch. Only then would there be a slight chance of success. Therefore, the most important thing was speed. He had to be fast, so fast that the River Styx Patriarch would not have time to react. Gahan, a treasure sword bearer, wanted to make the River Styx Patriarch lose the time to react. This was completely impossible. Gahan had calculated that it would probably take him 1/10 of a second to draw the sword at his fastest speed. But according to records, except for a few desolate level Yuan Ko, the rest of the desolate level Yuan Ko, especially the Yuan Ko of the immortal bloodline, had a reaction time of 1/10,000th of a second. They could even slow down time, just like how one day in heaven was equivalent to 1 year on earth. At the thought of this, Gahan's joy was all for naught. He believed that Lionian Ling's grandfather, Fleeting Wooden Fish, knew that the Yuan II and Abi swords could kill the River Styx Patriarch. Even though he ranked first on the ranking of Immortal and Sword and was the strongest person below Emperor sword bearers, he had taken his people and left without any intention of killing the River Styx Patriarch. In his opinion, it was impossible for him to stab the Yuan II and Abi swords into the River Styx Patriarch's body. Fleeting Wooden Fish could leave. He was not from Yuzhong City, and Yuzhong City did not have much connection with him. But Gahan could not leave. Even if the chance of success was 1 in 10,000, or even 1 in a billion, Gahan had to fight with his life on the line. At worst, he would die. Gahan looked at the time. There were 50 minutes left in the hour. Sitting on the ground, Gahan emptied his mind and closed his eyes, beginning to think about this faint chance of survival. Chapter 562. Quick, fly, fly, quick. These two words kept repeating in Gahan's mind. Gradually, his mind was in a trance, but he could not come up with a suitable solution. Gahan knew that his mind was in a mess. Usually, when he was calm, his mind would not be in such a mess. Gahan pulled out Qingpin's sword and slashed his thigh. Fresh blood instantly flowed out, and an intense pain engulfed Gahan's entire brain. Gahan, what are you doing? Don't kill yourself. Misaka Mikoto, who was next to Gahan, was a little scared when she saw this. Could it be that Gahan was so desperate that he wanted to kill himself? It's okay. I heard that pain can counteract confusion. I'm just using this method to calm myself down. Gahan waved his hand, indicating that he did not want to kill himself. He was just using the pain to calm himself down. Needless to say, this method was quite effective. Gahan had indeed calmed down, and his thoughts gradually became clearer. This child, it's really hard on him. Misaka Mikoto could not help but lament when she saw the blood on Gahan's thigh. The burden of the entire Yuzhong City was on Gahan's shoulders. Apart from herself, there was no one else who could help him. Just when Misaka Mikoto was worried about Gahan, Gahan suddenly asked, "Sister Mikoto, can you still use the god electromagnetic gun?" "Yes," Misaka Mikoto answered confidently. In fact, Misaka Mikoto knew the condition of her body the best. In order to eliminate the Styx River Patriarch in one go, Misaka Mikoto had used 98% of the power in her body. She was like a cell phone with only 2% of power left. She could shut down at any time due to battery exhaustion. Once Misaka Mikoto shut down her cell phone, it would not be easy to turn it back on again. Sister Mei-chin, let me ask you again. What's the fastest speed of your super electromagnetic gun? Gahan asked again. Can it be 10 to 20 times faster than the god electromagnetic gun? Plus, it can shoot something as heavy as me. As heavy as you? Misaka Mikoto was shocked, but she did not say anything. She lowered her head and calculated for a while. If I don't need any electromagnetic damage, I can shoot you 8 times faster than before. That's my limit. 8 times. Maybe it's enough. Guhan's face showed a determined expression. Whether it succeeds or not, it all depends on God. As the blood filled the entire core area of Yuzhong City, the Styx River Patriarch felt that the lives of hundreds of thousands of people were under his control. They were slowly changing into the appearance of an Azura. At the same time, his sea of blood was constantly wearing down the energy of the dimensional barrier. In just a little more time, the entire dimensional barrier would be destroyed by him. All the humans here would become his slaves, and his Azura sect would once again flourish. The Styx River Patriarch was very happy when he thought of this. These were the foundations for him to achieve enlightenment. Fleeting calendar, come out again if you can. Bring the Uintu of Vici out if you can. Come out again if you can. Bring the Uintu of Vici out if you can. The Styx River Patriarch muttered in his heart. He did not seem to know that there was something called a flag in this world. It was not his fault. When he was active, the concept of a flag did not exist in this world. However, the Styx River Patriarch seemed to have forgotten that although Kinzu was no longer around, the Uintu of Vici twin swords might not have disappeared. Suddenly, the Styx River Patriarch noticed some light flashing in the distance. His eyes lit up, and he clearly saw the scene in the distance. The Ian-level girl who had escaped earlier had jumped out again and gestured to launch the super electromagnetic gun. It seemed like she was ready to fire another shot at him. Wait a minute. Isn't this girl supposed to use a coin? Why is she using a person instead? The Styx River Patriarch realized that the girl was not preparing to fire a coin. Instead, it was a person who was wrapped in a layer of shiny gold metal. Instinctively, the Styx River Patriarch had an ominous premonition. Go! The Styx River Patriarch waved his hand, and a blood-colored stream of water shot toward Guhan and Misaka Mikoto. That was the stream of water that had sent Lu Lei flying. One could imagine the consequences if it hit Guhan. I'll block it. At the crucial moment, a little girl suddenly jumped out from Guhan's side, using her own body to block in front of this stream of water. Then her entire person directly exploded in the air, her physical body instantly disappearing, turning into a broken longsword that was like scrap iron, falling to the ground, drowning in this sea of blood. Itian, I'm sorry, Guhan said through gritted teeth. Misaka Mikoto was accumulating power and could not be disrupted. Helpless, Guhan could only use his sword maidens to block the blood arrow. This was what Guhan had planned in the emergency response center. When Guhan said that he planned to use them as shields, the sword maidens did not say a word. This was especially true for Itian. The sword maidens had always been a little undisciplined and liberal. However, she had strongly requested to be the first shield. In her words, this was called being a hero for the country and the people. After the blood arrow destroyed Itian, it disappeared as well. That was the unique characteristic of the Styx River Patriarch skill. Once the target was killed, the skill would disappear. This was written in the Styx River Patriarch's confidential information. Something's wrong. Something's very wrong. The Styx River Patriarch knew that the sword maidens were like their lives to the sword wielder. Under normal circumstances, the sword wielder would rather die to protect the sword maidens so that their descendants could continue fighting. However, this sword wielder had asked the sword maidens to block the attack for him. There must be a big problem. The Styx River Patriarch flicked his sleeves, and 2 blood arrows shot out at the same time. If it was possible, the Styx River Patriarch wanted to shoot 10 or even 100 arrows at the same time. Unfortunately, he had to maintain the existence of the sea of blood and ensure that there was an endless supply of blood. Otherwise, the Azura transformation process would be in vain. That was why he could only shoot 2 blood arrows at the same time. Guhan, brother, leave it to us this time. Seeing the 2 blood arrows shoot towards him, Guhan's remaining 2 sword maidens, Qingpin and Douyu, flew out without hesitation. They used their young bodies to block the blood arrow that had instantly killed Itian. Unsurprisingly, the 2 sword maidens also exploded and were instantly killed. However, Douyu almost broke in half, while Qingpin only returned to its sword form. There wasn't even a crack on its blade. How much longer do I have to charge for? Seeing that his 3 sword maidens had already fallen to the ground and couldn't even return to their swords, Gahan was extremely anxious. He was worried that the sword maidens would really break and enter an irreparable state, but he was also worried that there wouldn't be anyone left to block the attack for him to buy time. There's no need to wait. Now's the time. Misaka Makoto roared. Once again, Gohan charged forward. It was as if Gohan had returned to the time when he sat on the nuclear warhead. Back then, Artoria was behind him, but now it was Misaka Makoto who was behind him. Little brother, do your best. Misaka Makoto let out a relieved smile when she saw that she had launched the solid frost. She could no longer maintain her floating state and fell to the ground. The strange thing was the blood did not wrap around Misaka Makoto like how it would wrap around a human. It seemed like the blood sea could only transform a human into an Azura tribe member. First blade of the 3 green lotus blades, white lotus body. At the same time, Guhan used the first sword of the green lotus 3 swords, green lotus white root body. This was the second time that Guhan had actively used this skill. It was different from the first time because he had been suppressing it for too long. This time, Guhan had been practicing the first style of the Green Lotus 3 swords for a whole 20 minutes before he had accumulated enough energy for the Green Lotus white root body. He did not know if it was because Guhan had not completely mastered the 3 Green Lotus swords, but this sword technique could not be used as freely as the 9 swords of Mysterious Heaven. It would either automatically activate because he had suppressed it for too long, or he had to continuously accumulate chi because he did not accumulate enough. If Gahan had not used some special items in the sanctuary, he would have needed a longer time to accumulate chi. According to Gahan's estimation, if he wanted to prevent the Nether River Patriarch from dodging, Gahan would not even have 1/100th of a second from the time he launched the attack. That was why Gohan had to use the White Lotus body to improve his control over his body. Otherwise, he would have flown to the Nether River Patriarch's side in an instant, and Gohan would not even have time to draw his sword. You useless humans, do you really think you can fight back? The Nether River Patriarch was unconcerned as he watched Gahan fly towards him like a cannonball. He did not even have the interest to dodge. So what if the human crashed into him? He would just have one more Jura. Unfortunately, the Nether River Patriarch realized how wrong he was in the 100th of a second. 2 swords, one black and one white, suddenly appeared in the human's left and right hands like demons. Yuan-2, Avicii, The Nether River Patriarch was at his wit's end. He finally wanted to dodge, and all he had to do was take a small step to the left to evade Yuan-2 Avicii's attack. Unfortunately, he did not have that 1/10,000th of a second to react. Yuan-2 Avicii stabbed the Nether River Patriarch's body, and the Nether River Patriarch wailed in agony. Who would have thought that after 1,000 years, the Nether River Patriarch, who was ready to show off his might, would once again fall at the hands of Yuan-2 Avicii? Chapter 563. Like a cannonball, Gohan flew for several kilometers, passing through the windows of 7 to 8 buildings before crashing into a building that sold furniture. Then, he was lucky enough to fall on a sponge bed. The entire bed was crushed by Gohan, which stopped his flight. Gohan shook his head. There was no part of his body that did not hurt. According to Gohan's estimation, he had at least a dozen fractures, and many of his internal organs had ruptured. He reckoned that his body was bleeding. Although it would not kill him in the short term, it was excruciating to move. He wondered if the Nether River Patriarch was dead. Although it was excruciating, Gohan had to move. He wanted to see how the Nether River Patriarch was doing in the sky, and if he had killed him. Therefore, Gohan endured the pain and slowly crawled to the window through which he had just rushed in. When he looked up into the sky, his heart turned cold at once. The Nether River Patriarch's figure was still hovering in the air, and blood was still flowing out of his robe. However, the flow rate of this blood water was worlds apart from before. Previously, the flow rate of the blood water was a 5G network, which could cover the entire core area in an instant. Now, however, It was a 2G network, which was only slightly thicker than a faucet. From this, Gahan could tell that even if the blow did not kill the Nether River Patriarch, it had severely injured him. Gahan looked at the sword of Avicii and the sword of vitality that he had thrown away and felt a pang of regret. If only he had let go of the two swords after piercing the Nether River Patriarch's body. The Nether River Patriarch would have been dead by now. However, he had pierced through it with the swords. The sword of vitality and the sword of Avicii had probably only touched the Nether River Patriarch's body for 1/10,000th of a second. Gahan should be satisfied that the Nether River Patriarch had turned from 5G to 2G. Actually, Gahan couldn't be blamed for this. No one could complete the action of drawing and releasing the sword in a 10,000th of a second. Gahan being able to complete half of it was already very impressive. Even with the help of the Green Lotus White Root body, this was the limit of Gahan's ability. Unfortunately, it was all for naught. Patriarch Nether River did not die. His sea of blood did not break, and Yuzhong City was not saved. Gahan could no longer bear the pain and fell onto the sponge bed. Gahan left the medical bay to Ku-Rock Inn, and all the nanomachines were used on Leonian Ling. Gahan did not even have the ability to heal himself. He could only wait for the blood sea to rise and turn himself into a member of the Shura tribe. I'm tired. I want to sleep for a while. After doing everything he could, Gahan's heart was empty. The only thing left to do was to wait for death. Hey kid, are you going to wait for death? Just as Gahan was about to fall asleep, he suddenly heard a fierce voice. It was the voice of a yellow Emperor's sword. Yes. Gahan opened his eyes and found that the Emperor's sword had unknowingly appeared beside him. It was placed beside Yuan-Tu and Avicii. Gahan should be content to die beside two Emperor's swords. Why don't you have even the slightest bit of indomitable will? Emperor's sword seemed to be very unhappy with Gahan's attitude. Back then, I had experienced more despair than you. Didn't King survive all kinds of hardships? Now is not the time for you to be a coward. Is that so? Gahan turned his head and looked at the yellow Emperor's sword beside him. It was strange. Why did this guy have so many problems? Yuan-Tu and Abi were also Emperor's swords. Why did they never talk to him? I'm also going to die soon. I wonder if the Emperor's Sword Queen can tell me your name? Then I can die without regrets. Gahan suddenly wanted to know the name of this Emperor's Sword Queen. He wanted to see who this Sword Queen, who spoke in such a unique manner, was. It's not the time to tell you yet. You'll know later. The Emperor's Sword Queen chuckled. Then, for the first time, she spoke in an extremely serious voice. I have another method that can help you turn the situation around. However, I'm afraid you won't be able to bear the consequences of this method. I don't know if you're willing or not. I'm willing. All the hair on Gahan's body stood on end. Clearly, the Emperor's Sword Queen's words had pulled Gahan out of his despair. His entire body tensed up. Don't be in a hurry to agree. Listen to the price first. The yellow Emperor's sword floated up from the bed and stood in front of Gahan. What if this method turns you into a woman? With that, the Emperor's sword gently poked Gahan's crotch. There's no such thing as a real woman. Just like a classic freeze frame, Gahan did not know what to do with this price. All right, I'll be more specific. You can make your decision after that. The Emperor's Sword Queen said sternly. First of all, it's not to turn you into a woman forever. Instead, at certain times, it might not happen until you become an Emperor's sword wielder. It might also happen when you have sex with a woman. In short, this is something that cannot be controlled. However, more than 90% of the time, you'll still be the original Gahan. Hearing the Emperor's Sword Queen say this, Gahan felt much calmer. He had thought that he would always turn into a woman, but it was only occasionally. However, after thinking about it carefully, if he suddenly turned into a woman in front of his friends, it would be extremely terrible. Also, this method requires the cooperation of a famed sword lady. Oh right, your sword element has exceeded 10,000 quarks, right? If it hasn't, this method won't work. I do. Hearing that he needed the cooperation of a famed sword lady, Gahan had a bad feeling. He instinctively thought of King Yu, who was still in the game. That's good. Later, Eat the remaining 99% of the 6 transformations immortal pills. Of course, there's a 99% chance that you'll die, but don't be afraid. I want you to die. When you feel like you're about to die, immediately grab the famed sword lady and enter the synchronization stage. At that time, I'll stab you from the top of your head all the way to your perineum point. You don't have to worry about what happens next. Leave the rest to me. Hearing the Emperor Sword Queen's words, Gohan was silent for a long time. Finally, he said, "Can I ask a few questions?" "Sure," the Emperor Sword Queen answered readily. "But you have to be quick. It won't take long for the Nether River Patriarch to recover. Since there's a 99% chance that I'll die, what if there's a 1% chance that I'll survive?" Gohan asked his first question. "That's even better. Then you'll be an immortal sword wielder. With your UN2 and Avicii, you'll be able to kill the Nether River Patriarch with just these 2 swords." This was clearly the best situation for Gohan. Unfortunately, a 1% chance was a little too small. "What do you mean when I'm about to die? What if I'm 1 step too early or 1 step too late?" Gohan asked again. "It's about when you feel like your soul is about to leave your body for about a second. If it's too soon, you'll fail and you'll still die. If it's too late, you'll be dead." This was truly a harsh condition. Gohan could only last for 1 second. Unfortunately, the effects of the Green Lotus White Root body had already ended. Otherwise, Gohan would have a 100% chance of surviving until this moment. Without the Green Lotus White Root body, Gohan would only have a 50% chance of surviving. It wasn't difficult to seize this 1 second. The difficult part was realizing that he was going to die in 1 second. One last question. What will happen to the famed sword mistress that I synchronize with? Gohan asked the most important question. Just like normal synchronization, you'll have your own famed sword mistress. After the Emperor Sword Queen finished speaking, she realized that Gohan's expression immediately turned sour. It was as if he had fallen out of love. "Don't worry. I just need you to modify your body a little when you enter synchronization. It won't affect the new sword mistress that you're nurturing in your purple mansion. Don't worry. Your famed sword mistress will be fine." The Emperor Sword Queen thought that Gohan's ugly expression was because he didn't believe that synchronization wouldn't have any accidents and wouldn't harm the famed sword mistress. "Then I won't be able to synchronize anymore." At this point, Gohan stopped talking. He resolutely took out the 6 transformations golden pill from his dimensional pocket. Without even looking at it, he directly threw it into his mouth and swallowed it. Once the golden pill entered his stomach, Gohan felt a flame burning from his stomach to his entire body. In the end, even his purple mansion started burning. Gohan felt as if he was in a huge incinerator. He could be burned into a pile of ashes by these flames at any time. There's also green hair severing. There's also the sword mistress grafting technique. If I really can't do it, I'll give up my spirit sword mistress. King Yu, don't worry. I, Gohan, will definitely not let you down. Amidst the raging flames, Gohan kept thinking about King Yu's face. His heart was filled with guilt towards King Yu. With this guilt, the burning flames no longer seemed unbearable. "Gohan, what are you thinking about? You're about to die." Seeing that Gohan was a little distracted, the Emperor Sword Queen immediately shouted. This sentence brought Gohan back to his senses. At this moment, Gohan suddenly had a feeling that he was about to fly. Is this the feeling of my soul leaving my body? Is this the second before I die? Gohan didn't know whether he should pick up the famed sword mistress or not. If he was 1 step earlier, then wouldn't he be dead for sure? Indecisiveness will only lead to chaos. Gohan's hand grabbed a famed sword mistress that he had prepared. At this moment, Gohan started to petrify. Hee hee. Just in time, the Emperor Sword Queen smiled rather charmingly. She immediately pierced through the top of Gohan's head and directly into Gohan's pouch. Damn you, didn't you say it would open up a cave? Chapter 564. When Gohan's consciousness woke up from the Purple Palace, Gohan was shocked to find that he had lost control of his body. Even though his consciousness was very clear, he couldn't even control a finger or an eyelid. He was like a person in a vegetative state with high paraplegia. Oh, that's not right. A person in a vegetative state with high paraplegia could at least control his head, but Gahan couldn't control any part of his body. Is this what it feels like to have a body? Suddenly, such a sentence came out of Guhan's mouth, but no matter how one listened to it, it sounded like a sweet girl's voice, not Guhan's standard male voice. Could it be that I've really become a girl like the Sword Empress said? Gahan really wanted to confirm this, but unfortunately, Gahan could only share the various senses of his body. That was all. He couldn't even lower his head to look at his own body. However, Gahan quickly knew whether he was a man or a woman. This was because Gahan's body actually stood up on its own, then very rudely took off his clothes. Then he found a mirror in the furniture city and started admiring his naked body. Through this mirror, Gahan finally saw his current appearance. For the past 12 years, in the eyes of those who knew Gahan, this little guy had always been suppressed by hatred to the point that he couldn't stand up straight. He wanted to put all his energy and willpower into revenge. As for other things, Gahan didn't even think about them. Little did he know that the more perfect a person was, the greater the demon hidden in their heart. In other words, the greater the demon in a person's heart, the greater the holy angel hidden in their heart. Just like Wang Mang, who was a model of Confucianism in the first half of his life, became a shameless usurper in the later half of his life. Zhou Chu, who wreaked havoc in the countryside when he was young. Hong Qingqiu, who was willing to die for his chastity but ended up destroying the Ming dynasty. Prostitutes didn't want to kiss their clients. They only wanted to protect their last clean and holy place. Humans were the same. Wasn't Gahan the same? Gahan's personality was dark at the beginning. He was a loyal executor of self-interest, but now, Gahan was willing to sacrifice his life and gender for Yuzhong City. Gahan had been dismissive of so-called Mo at first, but after meeting Qing Pin, he almost became a Lelikan. Then we can infer that, although Gahan seemed to be a little frigid, pure, and disdainful of women, but in reality, he was what? In fact, in Gahan's heart, he had always had a very detailed fantasy about his future partner. The greater the despair of a person, the greater the desire in his heart. The more tragic the reality was, the more one liked to imagine their ideal world and ideal person in their heart. The person Gahan had drawn up in his heart was very detailed. She had a temperament like water. When she stood still, she was like a gentle and clear spring. When she moved, she was like the endless but lonely yellow river. She didn't have to be stunning or devastatingly beautiful, but she was absolutely unique. She could attract everyone's attention just by standing there. Even if death sank the fish and beasts fell from the sky, or outshone the moon and flowers by her side, it couldn't cover up her beauty. She must have long hair that reached her shoulders. It would be best if the tip of her hair was slightly curled up so that it could cover the slightly blushing cherry tips. Her skin must be whiter than snow. Although it was white, it wasn't the paleness of the white race. Instead, it was the kind of pure and flawless whiteness that came from the depths of her soul. Yes, her skin must not have a single flaw, not even a small red spot. Her skin must be like the face of a baby who had just turned 1 year old. It must be plump and full of elasticity. She must be able to show her charm through the fingertips. She didn't have to be tall, but the proportion of her body must be the best. No matter from which angle the photo was taken, it would be the most perfect person. Any little bit of PS would be extremely bad for her, because her body was already perfect to the extreme. Her twin peaks must be the most appropriate D cup. They were like two milky white jellies, timidly covering there. They were both tall and soft. On top of the jellies, they were decorated with the most resplendent jewels, revealing the light pink color of cherries. If a shirt was placed over them, you would be able to see the exuberant vitality within the clothes that were pushed up high. Every moment, there was life in her clothes, like two newborn kittens that were begging for their mother's love and caress. Her legs must be slender and straight. They were slender and strong, but full of the charm of beautiful flesh. There was not a single part of her skin that didn't emit an electric light that made one's heart numb. One would want to hold her in one's arms and carefully play with her for a year. It was like a sharp knife that could pierce through one's heart. At the first sight of this pair of legs, one would lose his soul and be completely captured by her. If she wore pure white stockings, it would be the most holy gift that God gave to a gentleman. Didn't it sound very strange? It was hard to believe that this was the hottest fantasy in Gahan's heart. Guhan's dark and cold setting seemed to be completely shattered at this moment. Looking at himself in the mirror, Guhan actually had an urge to cry, because this reflection of himself in the mirror completely matched all the above descriptions of his dream lover. It would be perfect if this person wasn't him. I'm so beautiful. In the mirror, Guhan gently held his two breasts with his two hands. His eyes revealed a sense of obsession. Boy, I didn't expect that there was such a perfect body in your mind. Could it be that you copied the memory in my mind? As soon as Gahan thought about it, he heard Gahan's mouth reply, "Not bad. This is the body that I made with reference to your memory. How about it? Do you like it?" "I like it." Gahan's consciousness was very honest and also very fiery and angry. "But I don't like this scene at all. You are blaspheming my dream. My spirit will never be in the same boat as my body." Don't be angry." Gahan gently put his jade-like finger in his mouth and sucked it. Then, he gently stroked the cherry with his slightly moist fingertip. A cold wind blew, and a tranquil and bone-chilling feeling almost froze Gahan's consciousness. "It's such a good body. It's such a pity to give it to you." After saying that, before Gahan's consciousness could refute, Gahan took out an ancient-style blue crescent-shaped dress from his dimensional pocket and put it on. This was the dress that Gahan had prepared for Etion. After Gahan put on, she looked a little more heroic and fairy-like. From this, it could be seen that the female version of Gahan was indeed Gahan's original body. Otherwise, Gahan's dimensional pocket would not have been opened so easily and could be used at will. All right, it's time to send the Nether River Patriarch off. Guhan tied the sash beneath his chest into a Z-ing knot and prepared for the final battle against the Nether River Patriarch. Wait! Realizing that his body was about to go out, Gahan's consciousness hurriedly stopped him. What's wrong? If this drags on, I might not be able to beat the Nether River Patriarch. Guhan said unhappily. You can't use my name. Guhan's consciousness said. Although this is Guhan's body now, I will never admit that this is me, Gahan. You must have a new name. A new name? Guhan's lips curled into a smile. All right, then from now on, I'll be called Gu Xianyuan. Gu Xianyuan? What a domineering name. Guhan repeated the name several times, and the Sword Empress finally gave herself away, or perhaps she told Gahan her name in another way. All right, now that I have a name, it's time to fight. Gu Xianyuan rolled up his sleeves, and a yellow Emperor sword appeared in his hand. It was the Emperor sword that I Ching had given to Gahan. Very good. The final battle was about to begin. Master, Juzi awaits your order. At the crucial moment, Gu Xianyuan's actions were interrupted again. A cold and elegant girl in black pulled Gu Xianyuan's sleeves and asked respectfully, Juzi? Gu Xianyuan was a little confused when she saw this cold and elegant girl. Since when did she have another girl by her side? It's Juzi, not Juzi. Guhan's consciousness reminded helplessly. She should be my famed Sword Empress, Juzi's sword. She's the Sword Empress that I successfully synchronized with just now. Oh, Master remembers now. You're the cute Juzi sword. Gu Xianyuan rubbed Juzi's face that could not be called cute at all. I don't have any orders for you. Just wait here for Master to beat up that pervert. Master, Juzi awaits your order. Unfortunately, Juzi's sword did not fall for Gu Xianyuan's trick at all. She still insisted that Gu Xianyuan give her a mission. Gu Xianyuan's pretty eyes turned, and she took out a video camera from her dimensional pocket. Then, cute Juzi, Master will give you an important mission. Gu Xianyuan placed the video camera in Juzi's sword hands. Record down Master's heroic posture. Understand? Yes. Master. Juzi's sword placed her palm across her chest and performed a horizontal chest salute that only the Mahis of ancient times would do, also known as the Mahis salute. Chapter 565. Not only could the Blood Sea transform humans, but it could also absorb their life force. With a continuous supply of life force, the Nether River Patriarch's power was gradually recovering. The blood flow that was as small as a faucet gradually grew to about half its original thickness. The first batch of Azura will be born in 3 minutes. As long as I have the blessing of the Azura tribe, I'll definitely be able to conquer this world and truly get rid of those existences. The Nether River Patriarch thought to himself, is that human still alive? I hope he doesn't show up in these 3 minutes. I seem to see the shadow of the fleeting calendar in that fellow. This is too bad. When all the Azura tribe is born, I'll personally eradicate this scourge. As the saying goes, what one thinks comes. Just as the Nether River Patriarch was planning how to get rid of Gahan, a person came out of nowhere and stood in front of the Nether River Patriarch. The blood sea beneath the Nether River Patriarch's robe flowed faster uncontrollably when he saw the human's appearance. The Nether River Patriarch was someone who was used to seeing beautiful women. The first batch of the Azura tribe he created back then, aside from the men, the women were all absolute beauties. They would attract a large number of die-hard fans in any era. Logically speaking, the Nether River Patriarch was not human at all, and it was impossible for him to have any desire for human beauty. However, the moment he saw the woman's appearance, his heart was slightly moved. Of course, it was just a slight movement. The Nether River Patriarch regained his composure in an instant, but he was 100 times more wary of this woman. A beauty that could guard his Tao heart was enough for the Nether River Patriarch to treat this woman with all his attention. Good. Very good material. From now on, you're the Gandharv of the Azura tribe. Gandharv was the most beautiful female Azura that the Nether River Patriarch had created in the original world. She was the Nether River Patriarch's proudest creation. It was a pity that Gandharv lacked some of her charm when compared to this woman, which made the Nether River Patriarch instinctively put Gandharv's name on Gu Xuanyuan's head. Tui, Gandharv, that slut who can marry anyone. How can she use my name? Gu Xuanyuan spat out a mouthful of saliva. As a result, the saliva fell into the sea of blood, causing the entire sea of blood to boil. In an instant, a few hundred cubic meters of seawater evaporated. Who are you? The Nether River Patriarch turned pale with fright when he saw that a mouthful of saliva evaporated hundreds of cubic meters of the blood sea that he had painstakingly created. This was his blood sea, and even universe-level Yuan Ko wouldn't be able to get rid of a single drop of it. However, this human evaporated hundreds of cubic meters of it. Who is this human? I'm the one who will send you home, Nether River Patriarch. Leave the humans to me. The Xianyuan sword in Gu Xuanyuan's hand trembled, and he turned into a phantom, striking the Patriarch of the Nether River in a flash. When they separated again, the Patriarch of the Nether River's black robe was torn to a great extent, and the blood wrapped in the robe gushed out, looking extremely terrifying. However, in contrast, Gu Xuanyuan's neck was a bloody mess, and blood kept dripping down. It was unknown whether it was the Patriarch of the Nether River's blood or Gu Xuanyuan's own. From the looks of it, both sides seemed to have suffered heavy losses. This power! The Patriarch of the Nether River's robe began to heal, and finally returned to its original appearance. At the same time, a look of understanding appeared on the Patriarch of the Nether River's face. I didn't expect it to be you. Xianyuan's sword, you've finally appeared. The Patriarch of the Nether River spat out a shocking name. That's right. This Emperor Sword-level sword lady who often spat out curses and even turned Gahan into a female body was the legendary Xianyuan, Sword of the Yellow Emperor, the ancestor of the human race. Although this sword had never appeared in the human world, its name had always remained in the hearts of all humans. Even after the cultural catastrophe, even if 95% of the culture had been destroyed, the names of Emperor Xianyuan and the Xianyuan sword had never disappeared from human records. This was because this was the ancestor of every Chinese. Every Chinese knew this name from the day they were born. They would definitely tell this name to their descendants, telling them that they were the descendants of the Yellow Emperor, the descendants of Emperor Xianyuan, and that the Xianyuan sword was the supreme emperor sword of the human race. That's right. Although the Xianyuan sword had never appeared in the human world, and there had never been any news about the Xianyuan sword's appearance, all humans unanimously regarded the Xianyuan sword as an emperor's sword and left a place for it among the top 3 emperor swords. In the words of Kinzu, if the Xianyuan sword was not an emperor's sword, no sword lady in the world would dare to call herself an emperor's sword. Because Emperor Xianyuan was the first emperor of the human race, the Xianyuan sword was naturally the first emperor's sword of the human race. Humans even speculated that as long as the Xianyuan sword appeared, it would be the time for the human race to prosper. The era of Kinzu and Jitian Jindi would once again appear in this world, leading the human race. They would beat Yuan Ko into hiding in his nest, not daring to come out and act presumptuously. Unexpectedly, the emperor's sword that I Ching gave to Guhan was the Xianyuan sword. It was no wonder that Long Shi Jindi and Hao Tian Jindi appeared at the same time to snatch this emperor's sword. They probably already knew that the Xianyuan sword was obtained by Jitian Jindi and then hidden somewhere. When the trial ground appeared, they guessed that the Xianyuan sword was there. However, Guhan had never thought of this. Even the smartest person would not be able to guess the identity of the Xianyuan sword without any information. It was only when the Xianyuan sword gave itself the name Gu Xianyuan that Guhan realized this through the homonym. It was no wonder that this Emperor Sword Queen could violate the common sense of all Emperor Swordswomen and speak on her own without any synchronization. It was no wonder that the Xianyuan sword could do this. She was the strongest Emperor Swordswoman according to 99% of human experts, and it would not be an exaggeration to call her the #1 swordswoman in history. I should have fled the moment I saw you appear, the Nether River Patriarch said sinisterly. But that attack just now exposed you. Xianyuan sword, I'm afraid you're not in your complete form. That's not even 1% of your strength. This isn't your complete form either, Nether River Patriarch. You are the leader of the Azura sect, the peak demi-saint who fought for the last holy seat in this world. You can't have your clothes cut open by my sword, can you? Gu Xianyuan retorted bluntly. By the way, where's your Yuan to Avicii? Cut the crap. The Nether River Patriarch's nose twitched. If it was you in your peak form, or in Gongsun Xuanyuan's hands, the Nether River Patriarch, would have turned around and left. But now it's not like I can't fight you. After the Nether River Patriarch finished speaking, the entire sea of blood boiled. At the same time, the humans in the blood cocoons who were turning into Azuras howled in pain. Their life force was being extracted by the Nether River Patriarch into the sea of blood. Damn it! How dare you use the lives of humans to fight me? Gu Xuanyuan's eyes widened, and with a leap, he actually dove into the blood sea that was dozens of meters deep, disappearing without a trace. Xianyuan sword, what are you doing? The Nether River Patriarch panicked. What was the Xianyuan sword trying to do? But in the next moment, the Nether River Patriarch understood what the Xianyuan sword was trying to do. The entire sea of blood began to boil like a pot of boiling water. The seawater was evaporating at an astonishing speed. In just a few dozen seconds, the sea of blood had dropped by about 10 meters. This was more than 100 times faster than the Nether River Patriarch shooting the blood. What was more frightening was that the boiling blood followed the connection between him and the sea of blood and burned his body, causing it to boil as well. Xianyuan's sword. I'll break you one day, the Nether River Patriarch said. The blood that was pouring out of his robe stopped at once. The Nether River Patriarch rose into the sky, ready to leave this terrifying place. Unfortunately, the Nether River Patriarch had forgotten one thing. This was the core area of Yuzhong City. Although his sea of blood had consumed more than 90% of the dimensional barrier's energy, the remaining 10% was enough to hold him off for a while. This amount of time was enough for Gu Xianyuan to finish him off. All of a sudden, a water dragon emerged from the boiling sea of blood and charged straight at the Nether River Patriarch. The Nether River Patriarch's eyes bulged at the sight of this. His robe puffed up, and a ball of extremely black blood gathered in his hand. It was clear that the Nether River Patriarch had given up on escaping and was ready to fight Gu Xianyuan to the death. The two invincible existences finally collided. All the humans in the blood cocoon in the core area felt their souls tremble at the same time. They seemed to see their ancestors, led by a shining golden giant, waging an earth-shattering battle against 99 half-human, half-beast monsters. In the end, the giant chopped off the neck of the most powerful enemy. All the humans knelt before the golden giant, offering their devotion to the giant and the divine sword. They also saw a beautiful woman with a human head and a snake's body, creating an artificial human. In the end, humans overcame all obstacles, made fire by drilling wood, built houses and woven clothes, planted crops with slash and burn, created characters with tortoise shell, divided yin and yang, arranged the 8 trigrams, and finally became the ruler of the world. These were the memories buried in the depths of every human soul. When Gu Xianyuan and the Nether River Patriarch collided, those memories burst out. Finally, the collision ended. When the dust settled, Gu Xianyuan and the Nether River Patriarch separated and stood opposite each other. That's not fair. You actually used the soul imprint of 300,000 humans. You didn't defeat me with your own strength. The Nether River Patriarch's body was like a balloon that had been punctured with countless holes, and blood kept leaking out. Defeat is defeat. Why so much nonsense? I'm really King stupid. The standard language style of the Xianyuan sword appeared once again. Ha ha ha. You and I are the same. You'll walk my path sooner or later. Let's meet at the next intersection. The Nether River Patriarch cracked his mouth and left those baffling words before completely exploding like an explosion. The dimensional vortex appeared. It was finally over. Chapter 566. The Nether River Patriarch was taken back by the dimensional vortex, and the rest of the blood in the core area naturally followed the Nether River Patriarch's dimensional vortex. However, Guhan vaguely saw something fly out of the Nether River Patriarch's body and quickly disappeared into the sea of blood. Something escaped. Guhan's consciousness quickly reminded the Xianyuan sword. It's okay. It's a good thing. Gu Xianyuan curled her lips and stopped talking about it. Since Gu Xianyuan said it was okay, Guhan simply shut his mouth. Gu Xuanyuan's real body was the Xianyuan sword, so she would not do anything to harm humans. If she said it was a good thing, then it was a good thing. At this time, the huge dimensional vortex was constantly swallowing the blood and was about to close. Quickly enter the dimensional vortex. Seeing this scene, Guhan's consciousness quickly said, "What for?" Gu Xuanyuan's eyebrows and nose wrinkled as she asked. Of course, to absorb the sword essence inside. Guhan's consciousness said quickly, "This is the dimensional vortex left by the desolate level Yuan Ko. The sword essence inside is probably more than 1,000,000 quarks. If you don't go in and absorb the sword essence, wouldn't it be a waste of God's gift? I know, you want the 1,000,000 quarks of sword essence so that you can at least become a spirit sword level sword wielder, right?" Gu Xianyuan sneered. "Extinguish your thoughts and think with your brain. I'm using your body, not my own. Your body is just a simple human. If you go in, you'll die. If you must go in, I can satisfy you." "I know." Guhan's consciousness said, "I mean to let Juzi sword go in. She's a famous sword level sword mistress, so she can also absorb 100,000 quarks of sword essence." "That won't do." Gu Xianyuan smiled faintly. "Juzi is helping me with the video. This is much more important than the sword essence." Guhan stopped talking. Guhan knew that he had no way of persuading this Emperor sword among Emperor swords. Therefore, he could only shut his mouth. He could only tell himself that it was only 100,000 quarks of sword essences. It was not a difficult task for him now. If he went all out to eliminate Yuan Ko, it would only take him half a year to a year to gather so many sword essences. Moreover, there was an 8-city convention in the game. As long as he obtained the sword essence oral solution that came first, Gohan's sword essence would increase by tens of thousands of quarks in an instant. In the end, the dimensional vortex closed and all the blood disappeared. The human also escaped from the blood cocoon, but he fell into a coma. He probably wouldn't wake up anytime soon. After Gu Xianyuan saw the dimensional vortex close, she slowly flew back to the furniture city and found the Juzi sword, who was still recording dutifully. All right, it's over. There's no need to shoot anymore. Gu Xianyuan patted the Juzi sword's head, and the Juzi sword obediently put down the camera and handed it to Gu Xianyuan. Gu Xianyuan watched the entire video. Yes, the recording was very clear, and the lens conversion was very good. The lens could actually keep up with the insane battle speed of Gu Xianyuan and the Nether River Patriarch. When it was time to take a long-distance shot, it was time to take a close-up shot. It made Gahan's blood boil. To put it bluntly, the standard of the Juzi sword's camera was no less than those photography masters who had won the Hungarian Film Awards. Next, like this. Gu Xianyuan pointed her finger at the Juzi sword's palm and wrote a long paragraph of words on the Juzi sword's palm with a crazy speed of 10 words per second. This made Gahan, who wanted to distinguish what Gu Xianyuan wrote, completely dumbfounded. Gahan didn't know how to write wildly. Wildly writing completely violated human common sense. Juzi understands. The Juzi sword seemed to have completely understood Gu Xianyuan's meaning and nodded very seriously. Very good. In this case, I can leave this guy's body with peace of mind. Gu Xianyuan nodded. But what does this mean? What does it mean to leave my body? Before Guhan could figure this out, he suddenly felt a wave of dizziness in his head, and he fainted. At the same time, in the emergency response center, the underground facility that had not been invaded by blood because of the best sealing effect, the cover of a medical chamber was slowly opened. Ku Rakin trembled and climbed out of the medical chamber. Did Liunian Ling and the others save me? Why are my injuries not completely healed? After waking up, Ku Rakin found that although his most serious wounds had completely healed, there were still some wounds that had not recovered. His skin and flesh were still exposed, but the bleeding had stopped. He should not die for a while. Jules Vrin glanced at the monitor of the medical cabin and saw that the few most important medical resources had all lit up with a red light and showed the number 0%. He knew that it was because the medical cabin's resources had been exhausted that he could not be completely cured. Ku Rakin's eyes habitually glanced at the bottom of the medical chamber, and he was suddenly stunned. This is his mark. Ku Rakin found that there was a key-like icon at the bottom of the medical chamber. Others might not know, but Ku Rakin knew this icon very well, because this icon was the Zhu family's emblem. In this world, there were only 2 people who could engrave the Zhu family's emblem on the medical chamber. One was him, and the other was his father, Zhu Wudao. Ku Rakin's medical chamber had been used by other sword-bearers. Moreover, the appearance of this medical chamber was completely different from Ku Rakin's medical chamber. There was only one possibility left. This medical chamber was his father, Zhu Wudao's medical chamber. Could it be that my father saved me? When Ku Rakin thought of this, he angrily kicked the medical chamber. Who needs you to save me? Mind your own business. After venting his anger on the medical chamber, Ku Rakin felt a lot better. He had been to the emergency response center before, so he knew where the emergency response center's exit was. So, Ku Rakin was ready to leave and return to the ground to find the main force of the sword-bearers. As a result, near the exit, he suddenly found a girl lying on the ground. The girl was about 7 or 8 years old, and she looked very cute. She had 9 thin ponytails on her head. Cute, very cute. Is there anyone else who has been rescued? Ku Rakin thought that this was the person who was rescued by Zhu Wudao, so he did not have much doubt. He used his finger to feel the little Loli's nose and found that her breathing was very even. She should have just fallen asleep. So, he did not pay too much attention to it. He stepped over the little Loli's body and prepared to leave through the exit. However, after taking a few steps, Ku Rakin returned. He picked up the little Loli, found 2 chairs, put the little Loli on the chairs, and left again. It seemed that Ku Rakin was worried that the little girl would catch a cold. He was really kind-hearted. However, after a few steps, Ku Rakin returned for the second time. He picked up the little Loli, smiled bitterly, and shook his head. He supported his injured body and left the emergency response center together. Where am I? Guhan woke up from his long dream and opened his eyes. He found himself in a room that was as bad as it could get. There was a stench around him, and it felt like he was in a garbage dump. At this time, Guhan had regained control of his body, but only his head. Guhan could slightly turn his neck, but even if it was just a little bit, he would suffer a lot of pain. But pain was nothing to Guhan. Guhan turned left and right and looked around. Oh my God, I'm in a pile of garbage. Guhan was surrounded by all kinds of parts that he didn't know where they came from. These parts emitted a terrible smell. It seemed like they had been in the garbage for a long time. Guhan could even see rotten apples on some of the parts. It was really disgusting. Xianyuan, Xianyuan. Guhan opened his mouth and found that his voice was also hoarse. He spoke intermittently, like a broken bellow. You're awake? Xuanyuan's lazy voice rang out. If you want to ask me how you became like this, then I'm sorry, I don't know. No, I just want to thank you for saving Yuzhong City. Guhan's voice became softer and softer until it was completely inaudible. Obviously, his throat could not support him to continue speaking. Why are you thanking me? This is what I should do. After all, I am the ancestor of the human race. Xianyuan did not expect Guhan to thank him, and for a moment he panicked. Forget it. Since you're so sensible, I'll tell you a little about it. Xianyuan immediately forgot what he had just said. Although you used the power of the 6 Revolutions elixir to defeat the Nether River ancestor, your body could not withstand the power. In the end, I could only disperse the remaining elixir's power and distribute it to various parts of your meridians. So now your body is filled with the remaining power of the 6 Revolutions elixir. It is impossible to convert the elixir into sword essence, but it can be absorbed by your meridians, bones, and flesh. If you successfully absorb the elixir, your body will transform into a half-immortal body, which is equivalent to the body of a Fey-level Yuan Ko. You can completely discard the Sword Mother and use your physical strength to fight against the Fey-level Yuan Ko. What do you think? I treat you very well, like my own son. Of course, it takes time to absorb the elixir. Before a certain part of your body absorbs the elixir, you can't use that part of your body. In other words, you can only lie here and wait for the elixir to be absorbed by you. All right, I'm sleepy. I'll talk to you after I sleep for 10 days or half a month. Good girl. Good night. After explaining the current state of Guhan's body, the Xianyuan sword completed its task and went to sleep. At the same time, footsteps came from outside the door of the room where Guhan was. It seemed that the owner of the room had arrived. Guhan also knew who brought him here. To be honest, the smell of the room was a little too unfriendly for a sick person. Chapter 567. One of the footsteps was short and hurried, while the other was light and steady. Therefore, Guhan speculated that it should be an adult and a child, a brother and a sister. Sure enough, he soon heard the clear and melodious voice of the younger brother. Sister, sister, this beautiful sister that I picked up is still sleeping. At this time, Guhan did not open his eyes. Instead, he closed his eyes and continued to pretend to be asleep. This way, the people who came in would let their guard down so that they could say what they wanted to say without hiding anything. Guhan would also be aware of his real situation. It's just that this beautiful sister is still sleeping. What does that mean? Could it be that I'm still in the state of a woman? Suddenly, Guhan wanted to touch his chest to see if he was a man or a woman. All right, be quiet. Don't wake this sister up. Let her sleep for a while more. The person who responded was a calm girl. However, judging from her voice, she should not be much older. They must be a pair of siblings. Oh, okay. The younger brother's voice instantly became softer. Then he asked, Sister, how's your business today? The sister was silent for a while. Very good. Many people came to watch Sister's performance today. Sister earned a lot of money today. Really? That's great. The younger brother cheered. Sister, we haven't eaten potatoes for dozens of days. Let's buy some potatoes today to make hot and sour shredded potatoes. Xiaojian said that people who always eat nutrient solutions will not grow taller. Okay, sister will buy potatoes for you tomorrow. Although the sister agreed very quickly, Guhan could hear the embarrassment in her voice with his eyes closed. It seemed that things were not as this sister said. They had earned a lot of money. At the mention of potatoes, Gahan could not help but think of his favorite hot and sour shredded potatoes when he was young. This was also a somewhat extravagant food for him. However, Gahan's family could eat hot and sour shredded potatoes once or twice a week. Moreover, Gahan's family usually had rice to eat. For ordinary people, potatoes were slightly more expensive than rice. Therefore, Gahan's family could eat potatoes once or twice a week. However, from the conversation just now, the two siblings had not eaten potatoes for dozens of days. Moreover, their main food was nutrient solution. The name sounded very nutritious, but in fact, it was tasteless and could only meet the basic needs of human survival. Nutrient solution was the cheapest food in the city. This food was completely synthesized by the machine. The government distributed it to everyone for free. As long as you needed it, you could get it from the machine on the street. It was like a faucet. As long as you turned the switch, the nutrient solution would flow out. You could eat as much as you wanted. Therefore, the whole of Yuzhong City had achieved something that had not been achieved before the apocalypse. No one had starved to death. However, only the lowest class of people would rely on nutrient solution every day. Families with a bit of ambition would try to let their own family eat delicious white rice. This pair of siblings actually completely used nutrient solution as their main food. From this, it could be seen that they should be in a very poor state. This was not surprising. From the house, full of garbage, Gahan could guess a little bit. "That's sister. Can I watch TV for a while?" The younger brother asked timidly. "Sure, but not for too long. We don't have much electricity left. We have to last until next month. Do you understand? I'm going to cook for you," the sister said sternly. "Hooray, let's go watch cartoons." The younger brother cheered and turned on the TV. The sound of the TV was a little hoarse, and there was a lot of static. It sounded like the speaker of the TV was about to be completely broken. They really were very poor. Gahan heard the sound of the TV constantly changing. Obviously, the younger brother kept changing the channel. After changing about a dozen channels, the younger brother threw the remote control to the side in dissatisfaction. "Sister, why aren't you playing cartoons? This should be the cosmic Superman Patrick Star. Why are all the channels broadcasting the news? It's so boring." "Then you should listen to the news. The core city has just struggled out of the disaster. The two of us also escaped from death. It's a good time to listen to the situation now, what the officials of the council plan to do, and whether they will give us some compensation." Helpless, the younger brother could only listen to his sister and watch the news. Thanks to this news, Gahan finally had a certain understanding of Yuzhong City after he was in a coma. A very haggard female anchor quickly reported, according to incomplete statistics after the end of the Great Attack, 71 million people in the core city went missing, 25 million died, and 390,000 survived. A large number of skeletons were placed in the temporary disposal center of what used to be the commercial CBD. Those who can't find their families can go to the temporary disposal center to claim their family's remains. The Sword Council's Temporary Aftermath Committee reminds everyone that if the remains of your family can't be found in the temporary disposal center, please don't be sad. The Sword Council will build a unified memorial for the missing, and everyone can express their grief at the memorial. According to the news from the Sword Council's Temporary Aftermath Committee, all the remaining Yuan Ko in the periphery of Yuzhong City have retreated. The army of sword bearers in Yang Fortress has returned. The cleanup of the remaining Yuan Ko in the city is being carried out in an orderly manner. 99% of the remaining Yuan Ko have been cleaned up. If you find any fish that escaped the net, please immediately call the communication number, XXXXX. A professional team of sword bearers will contact you and carry out the cleanup. Yesterday, under the command of the Sword Council's chairman, Sword Pavilion Master Cloudy, Sword Immortal Lu Lei, all the missing spirit sword-level sword bearers have returned from Heim Prison. The vital signs of all spirit sword-level sword bearers are good, and the safety of Yuzhong City has been further improved. In the Sword Council's regular press conference this morning, Sword Immortal Lu Lei, the Tiger Roar Sword Spirit, the Pleated Sword Spirit, and the other 3 Spirit Sword level sword bearers held a meeting and made a speech. The tiger roar sword spirit called on us to unite with Lord Lu Lei as the core, to save ourselves, and to rebuild the beautiful new core area. At the press conference, Sword Immortal Cloudy Sword revealed to us that the Sword Bearer Service Center has been seriously damaged and will take more than 3 months to recover. Before that, all the sword bearers will be transferred to the temporary Sword Bearer Service Center in the ordinary area. At the same time, it will be changed to a temporary center that can only handle some matters. Please wait patiently for the new Sword Bearer Service Center to be completed. At the same time, Sword Immortal Cloudy Sword severely refuted the rumor that all the sword ladies of the Sword Pavilion have been lost. Sword Immortal Cloudy Sword told us that the Sword Pavilion has been under a strong attack, and the buildings have been seriously damaged. The Sword Pavilion will conduct closed-door maintenance for more than a month, and all the sword ladies are intact. He warned all those who spread this false news with ulterior motives, once found, will be severely punished. At the end of the press conference, Sword Immortal Cloudy Sword once again issued a search order to all the residents of the city. Anyone who has any clues about our respected and brave temporary chief commander, Lord Gahan, will be rewarded with 100,000 to 10 million renminbi. Below are the photos of Lord Gahan, and please pay attention to the search. Yesterday, we interviewed the urban planning expert, Professor Su. He said that the population of the core area has been greatly damaged. In order to restore the population of the core area, the Sword Committee and the Council will definitely relax the requirement of merit points for ordinary people to enter the core area. This will probably be implemented after the Council is reorganized. However, the people in the normal area have expressed their reluctance to enter the core area, saying that the normal area is safer. Like the sun, the memorial service for the former chairman of the Sword Committee, Sword Immortal Baiju Wudao, will be held in the Heavenly Heart Pavilion in the normal area tomorrow. A public memorial service will be held at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Millions of people in Yuzhong City will kneel before Lord Wudao's coffin to express their grief. Here is the latest news that our station has received. A joint condolence group formed by Yinjing City, London City, and Buenos Aires City will arrive in Yuzhong City in 5 days. At that time, they will conduct a joint condolence for Yuzhong City for 10 days and will launch a comprehensive aid work for Yuzhong City. One side is in trouble. Help is coming from all sides. Love is boundless in the world. The TV stopped abruptly at this point. Her sister must have finished cooking and turned off the power in order to save electricity. Luine, eat properly. I'll go feed this sister. After saying this, Gahan felt someone holding his head up, opening his mouth, and pouring some colorless and odorless nutrient solution into his mouth. She waited for the nutrient solution to flow down his throat before pouring some more. In terms of feeding, this sister was undoubtedly doing a great job. It's already been 10 days, and the core area is still in chaos. I don't have enough money. What should I do? The older sister whispered worriedly as she fed Guhan. Previously, she had mentioned that she relied on performing to earn money. Perhaps she could have earned quite a lot of money when the core area was in a state of prosperity, but now that the core area was in a mess, who would be interested in watching performances? This older sister's livelihood had probably been cut off. Cough, cough. Perhaps because sister was thinking about something, she accidentally spat a mouthful of nutrient solution into Gahan's mouth. Gahan realized that he should take the initiative to swallow it, but his movements could not keep up with his thoughts. It was the first time in his life that Gahan was choked by nutrient solution. He started coughing violently, and even his eyes opened. That's great. You're finally awake. Forget it, Gahan could not continue acting. Chapter 568. Why, am I here? Who are you? Guhan's throat could not be used normally. Guhan could only use a very soft voice to say a few words. The sister had to put her ear on Guhan's mouth to hear what Gahan was saying. We are all civilians from the core area. We found you in the furniture city and found you unconscious. You were covered in blood and your gadget was missing. We could only bring you to my house to recuperate. The sister explained, My name is Lu Shihua, and this is my brother Luin. Don't worry, we're not bad people. If you want to leave, you can do so at any time. Thank you. I can't move now. Gahan couldn't finish his words. His throat couldn't take it anymore. He had to rest for a while before he could continue speaking. It's okay, Mississippi. You can rest here for as long as you want. Sister Lu Shihua said gently. Then, she left Guhan's side and went to do something with her brother. Guhan didn't know what to do. Guhan could calm down and combine the information he had just learned from the TV to put a simple end to his current situation. First of all, his body was still that of a girl. From what Xin Yuan said, before he completely absorbed the remaining power of the 6 Revolutions pill, he wouldn't be able to regain his male body. Secondly, his master, Lu Lei, was still alive and was constantly looking for clues about him. Most importantly, all the innate sword ladies of the Sword Pavilion were with him. Without them, the Sword Pavilion would definitely be in a state of panic. Lu Lei didn't refute any rumors. Everyone was in a state of panic. If he didn't send a natural sword maidens back, Yuzhong City would be in chaos again. I can't let my master worry about me and these natural sword maidens. I have to send them all back. Guhan thought silently. Logically speaking, the best thing he could do now was to tell the Lu siblings his true identity, and then have them send him to Lu Lei's place. Guhan would definitely be able to enjoy 100 times more care than here. Unfortunately, Guhan gave up on this idea without even thinking about it. What a joke. His current body was Gu Xuanyuan's body. How could Gahan use this body to meet Lu Lei, Misaka Mikoto, and Song Hama? Gahan made up his mind. Before he regained his gender, he would hide here to recuperate. He wouldn't go anywhere and wouldn't see any friends. However, Gahan felt that he should at least give Lu Lei the dimensional pouch filled with the natural sword maidens. It had been 10 days. The natural sword maidens had been missing for 10 days. Lu Lei probably wouldn't be able to have a good night's sleep. He couldn't let Lu Lei worry about the natural sword maidens anymore. He had to find a way to return the dimensional pouch to Lu Lei. The problem was that Gahan didn't want to show his face. Moreover, his gadget had completely disappeared when his body was transformed. Gahan couldn't contact anyone he knew. How could he safely pass these things to Lu Lei without revealing his face? Gahan fell into deep thought. Luin, take good care of this lady at home. I'll go out and see if there's any work to be done. After Lu Shihua finished his meal, he rushed out again, leaving his brother Lu Yin alone in the house. Gahan was currently trying to communicate with his sword maidens. However, because of the 6 Revolutions elixir, Gahan couldn't enter his purple mansion to find his sword mark. Not being able to find a sword mark meant that Gahan couldn't communicate with Qingpin and the others. In fact, Gahan didn't even know what happened to Qingpin and the others. Back then, Qingpin and the others had been killed by the Nether River Patriarch in order to protect him. They fell into the Blood Sea, and he didn't know where they were now. If not for the faint connection between him and the 3 sword maidens, Gahan suspected that they might have been broken by the Nether River Patriarch's attack. As long as his sword mark was still there, even if Qingpin and the others were temporarily separated from him, they would return to him sooner or later. As long as he regained control over his sword mark and they weren't broken, they would immediately return to him. There was no possibility of losing them. Qingpin, Douyu, and Yi Tian had gone missing because they took a bullet for him, but Juzi should have been by his side when he fainted. He still had a sword maiden, but where was she? Guhan slowly turned his neck and looked at the tall pile of discarded parts around him. This was the first time Gahan had carefully observed these parts, and found that they were all taken from various electronic waste. At this moment, there was a little boy who was about 1 meters tall and so skinny that even his bones could be seen. He was sitting on top of the pile of parts, fiddling with the parts in his hands. Hey, Gahan called out. Lu Yin's little ears twitched. He looked up and jumped down from the pile of parts. Beautiful sister, I'm not called Hey. I have a name. I'm Lu Yin. Lu as in highway. Yin as in invisible. The first thing the little boy did when he jumped down was to correct Gahan's way of addressing him. But how could this little boy be so glib at such a young age? How could he call her beautiful sister so smoothly? Lu Yin. Hello. Gahan still used up a lot of energy to speak. Let me ask you, when you found me, did you say girl in black clothes? A girl in black clothes? Luin thought for a moment, then shook his head decisively. Beautiful sister, you were found by me. There was no one else around you. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been left there. Black sword did you see? Gahan asked again. Black sword? I don't think I've seen this before. Luin touched his head and thought for a moment. Then he patted his head hard. But I found a video camera beside you. I took it back. See if it's your video, beautiful sister. Luin scurried in his pile of parts. After a while, he jumped down with a video camera. It was the camera that Juzy's sword used to record him. There was no mistake. Beautiful sister, is this camera yours? I swear to God, I haven't seen the video inside. Luin raised his little hand and promised. It's mine. Gahan nodded with difficulty. Just as he was about to say something, he heard a knock on the door. Strange. Who's knocking on the door? Is sister back? Luin felt strange when he heard the knock on the door. He and his sister depended on each other. Apart from his sister, no one else had ever knocked on his door. But after his sister went out, it would take at least 1 or 2 hours for her to return. Who was knocking on the door now? Luin hurried to the door. His door didn't even have a keyhole. He could only open the door nervously. In the end, he saw a cold and elegant girl in dirty black clothes standing in front of his door. Hello. Although this girl's body was dirty, it couldn't hide the girl's beauty. If Luin hadn't seen Gahan's beauty and gotten used to it, he might have started drooling and giggling when he saw this girl. Master is here. There's Master's smell here. Without waiting for Luin to speak, the cold and elegant girl walked into the room. Luin suddenly realized and hurriedly followed the girl into the room. It stinks. Disgusting, disgusting. As soon as the cold and elegant girl entered the room, she pointed out the sour and rotten smell in the room and expressed her evaluation. This made Luin feel ashamed. Sorry, it's all my fault for collecting these things. Luin murmured. Unfortunately, the cold and elegant girl didn't care about what he said. She suddenly knelt beside Gahan and said respectfully, Master, Juzy finally found you. Good, good, Gahan said excitedly. He was just thinking about how Juzy's sword was missing and how he couldn't contact her through the sword mark. Just when he was worrying about where to find her, Juzy's sword actually took the initiative to appear in front of Gahan. Juzy, where did you go? Pitiful, Gahan's voice was seriously out of tune. When he said Juzy, it became Juzy. I was sleeping in the cabinet. When I woke up, Master was gone. Juzy's sword's face was calm. The smell on the ground is very faint. I looked for a long time before I found this place. Hearing Juzy's sword's words, Luin couldn't help but be puzzled. What did she mean by the smell on the ground is very faint? Could it be that this cold and elegant girl found this place by smelling the smell on the ground? In fact, until a few years later, some of the survivors in the core region would vividly describe to their friends the scene of a young girl sniffing the ground like a puppy. This scene was truly unforgettable for them for the rest of their lives. You've worked hard. Gahan was also a little touched. Although this Juzy looked a little stiff, she was actually willing to find him and lie on the ground to smell his smell. This kind of loyalty, Gahan dared to guarantee that even Qingpin and Douyu couldn't do it, let alone Etion. Master, please give me the task. Juzy's sword raised its head high. This guy seemed to have said the same thing to it when the synchronization was completed. Go into my clothes and take out a brocade pouch. After Gahan finished speaking, Juzy's sword unceremoniously reached into Gahan's clothes. Because Gahan lost control of his body, he didn't feel anything, but Luin was dumbfounded. What did he see? A cold and elegant girl actually reached her hand into the clothes of another peerless beauty. As a result, this peerless beauty's clothes began to shake wantonly, causing the young Lu Yin's heart to feel inexplicably shy. Ahem. Fortunately, Lu Yin was only a child who wasn't even 10 years old. In any case, he should at least pay attention to his image. Chapter 569. When Juzy's sword took the dimensional bag that contained all the natural sword ladies and left to give it to Lu Lei, Gahan was quite relieved. He felt that he had finally put down a rock. However, a few hours later, his sister Lu Shihua came back from outside and told Lu Yin that there was a cold and elegant girl walking in circles in front of her house. She looked very strange, so Guhan could only ask Lu Shihua to bring Juzi's sword back. Juzi, why is she walking? Gahan asked helplessly. Master's master. Smell. I don't know. It seemed like Juzi's sword could only rely on smell to find people. Even though Gahan had given the address of the sword pavilion in great detail, Juzi's sword didn't seem to know what Gahan was talking about. This made Gahan very distressed. He didn't expect Juzi's sword to have a poor sense of direction. Juzi isn't a poor sense of direction. Master, as if understanding Gahan's thoughts, Juzi said with conviction. Juzi can remember all the places that Juzi has been to. Well, regardless of whether Juzi was a poor sense of direction or not, Lu Shihua's gaze towards Gahan was filled with suspicion. Lu Shihua was filled with vigilance towards this girl who suddenly appeared and called Guangu Han Master. This pair of beautiful girls could be said to be peerless in their generation. Miss, since your family has found you, can you leave now? Lu Shihua was ready to chase her away. No, I can't leave here. Gohan couldn't move his hands and feet, and even his divine sense couldn't leave his brain. Even if there were many treasures in the dimensional bag, and there were 3 universe realm Yuan Ko, he couldn't take them out. This was because his divine sense couldn't enter the dimensional bag and couldn't take out the things inside. Once Gahan left this place, he would probably have to sleep on the streets. Sleeping on the streets was one thing, but what was terrifying was Guhan's current devastatingly beautiful appearance. Gohan knew how devastatingly attractive his current appearance was to normal men. He believed that if he slept on the streets, he would definitely receive some chilling treatment. Even Gahan couldn't help but feel a little creeped out. Therefore, Gahan made up his mind to not leave this place at least before he regained his mobility. Seeing the sorrowful expression on Gu Xian Yuan's beautiful face, Lu Shihua's mind instantly filled in a lot of scenes. What family grudges, Liang Shanbo and Zhuing Tai, and so on. Lu Shihua was immediately filled with pity for Gu Xian Yuan. All right, if you don't mind my place being too smelly, too messy, and I only have nutrient fluid for food, you can stay here for as long as you want. Lu Shihua's heart softened in the end. Next was dinner time. As usual, Gohan was allocated a bowl of nutrient fluids, and so was Juzi. Seeing that Juzi addressed Gu Xianyuan as master, he naturally thought that Juzi was Gu Xianyuan's maid, so he handed over the task of feeding Gu Xianyuan to Juzi. The result was very funny. After Juzi poured the nutrient fluids into Gohan's nostril for the 3rd time, Lu Shihua had no choice but to take over the task of feeding Gu Xianyuan. When the lanterns were lit, there was only a weak light in Lu Shihua's house. With the help of this weak light, Lu Yin was still fiddling with a game helmet in his hand. This was the dedicated game helmet for Sword Maiden Online. Although Sword Maiden Online could be played by personal terminals, if one used a dedicated game helmet, one could experience a better game effect. So, Gahan usually used a game helmet to play games at home. The game helmet in Lu Yin's hand looked like it was decades old. It was gray, and the paint on it was mottled. It was probably thrown away by someone, and then Lu Yin picked it up. Damn it, which welding pin is the problem? Lu Yin tried wearing the helmet for a long time, but he still couldn't use it. He was so angry that he threw the helmet on Gu Xianyuan. Beautiful sister. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Lu Yin quickly jumped down, picked up the helmet, and said apologetically. Although he already knew Gu Xianyuan's name, Lu Yin was still used to calling Gahan beautiful sister. Regarding this, Gahan expressed helplessness. Forget it. I'm living under someone else's roof. As long as you're happy. P.S. The names Gu Xianyuan and Guhan seem to be used a little incorrectly. Author, please explain. When describing Guhan's consciousness, use Gahan, and when describing Gohan's body, use Gu Xianyuan. Looking at the game helmet, Gahan suddenly had an idea. Since he couldn't contact them in real life, he could contact them through the game. As long as he could find Songhama in the game, he could get him to tell his master that he was safe. He could also tell him a place to bring the dimensional brocade pouch containing the natural sword Maiden to Liu Lei. This was indeed a good idea, so it was especially important to fix the helmet in Liu Yin's hand. If he couldn't fix the helmet, Gahan's idea of contacting him through the game would be an illusion. Liu Yin, that helmet, where is it broken? Gu Xianyuan's voice was much better than before. Although she was still stuttering, her voice was much louder. This meant that Guhan's body was constantly absorbing the medicinal power of the 6 Revolutions immortal pill. Back then, Gahan had also studied the game helmet for a while. Although he didn't know much, he might be able to find the problem with the helmet and then fix it. It seems like there's a problem with this chip. There are 268 soldering pins here. I've already welded them over 100 times, but I can't find the right welding method. Liu Yin already knew what the problem was, but he couldn't find the right welding pins. He could only use the stupidest method to test them one by one. Regarding this, Gahan could only express his helplessness. He didn't know anything about welding pins. Just when the whole thing seemed to have reached a stalemate, the silent Juzi sword suddenly spoke. Master, do you want to fix this thing? Yeah. Gu Xianyuan snorted and didn't take Juzi sword's words to heart. However, what happened next on Liu Yin? Juzi sword suddenly took the helmet from Liu Yin's hand and then took Liu Yin's tin welding pin. Both hands started working at the same time. Liu Yin only saw that his eyes were dazzled for a while. His eyes were filled with the afterimages of Juzi's hands. It was as if he saw dozens of hands appearing at the same time. In less than 10 seconds, Juzi threw the helmet back into Liu Yin's arms. It's fixed. Try it. Juzi's sword said coldly. Are you kidding me? Liu Yin put the game helmet on his head in disbelief. In less than 10 seconds, he took off the helmet with a face full of excitement. Oh my god, this is incredible. Sister Juzi, you actually fixed this helmet. Because of Gu Xianyuan's magical accent, Liu Yin and Liu Shihua thought that Juzi sword's name was Juzi. Although they felt that the name was very strange, she was a maid from a rich family. It was normal for her to have a strange name. Juzi sword was quite indifferent to Liu Yin's surprise, as if it was just a trivial matter. Oh right, Gahan remembered that Juzi sword was the sword of Moz, the founder of the Mo family. Moz was known as the first scientist in China. As Moz's sword, it was normal for Juzi sword to know some skills. However, could it be that during the spring and autumn warring states period, there was already such a thing as a game helmet? Sister Juzi, teach me how to fix the game helmet. On the other side, Liu Yin excitedly and pleadingly pulled Juzi sword's hand. Sister Juzi, please teach me. Unfortunately, Juzi sword was indifferent to Liu Yin's request. I know, I've seen it on TV before. These are all secrets. Only by worshipping Sister Juzi as my master will Sister Juzi teach me these things, right? Liu Yin said as he prepared to kneel in front of Juzi sword and worship Juzi sword as his master. However, when Liu Yin knelt down, he found that Juzi sword was no longer in front of him. Instead, it was kneeling beside Gu Xianyuan and placed the game helmet next to Gu Xianyuan's head. Liu Yin, helmet, can you lend it to me? Gu Xianyuan asked with her big bright eyes. Okay. Anyway, I'm only 10 years old and can't use it. This was also repaired by Sister's maid. Beautiful sister can use it. After getting Liu Yin's approval, with the help of Juzi's sword, this old game helmet was finally put on Gahan's head. Genetic test, normal. Welcome back to the game. Player military governor. After the light dimmed and brightened, the system notification said that after almost 2 months, Gahan finally entered the game and returned to the Ming Dynasty Jiangnan luxurious manner in the game. In the game, Gahan finally got rid of the embarrassment of not being able to control his own body in reality and became a normal man again. That's right, a normal man. The first thing Gahan did when he entered the game was to touch his chest and crotch. Fortunately, Gahan and everything else were still there. He was still the real Gahan in the game. At this moment, Gahan was standing in the main hall. There was a maid NPC serving him with her head lowered. He thought about King Yu, who he didn't know where. This scene in the game actually made Gahan feel like he had returned home. Let me ask you, where is King Yu now? The first thing Gahan did was to find King Yu. The last time he left the game, he told King Yu that he would be back in 20 days and at most a month. In the end, it had already been around 50 days. With King Yu's personality, she probably hated him to death by now. He didn't know how to comfort her so that she would forgive him. What was more terrifying was that he had promised King Yu. Now, he might really have to go back on his word. Is Master asking about Madam? The maid suddenly said something that made Gahan sigh. Yes, I'm asking about Madam. Gahan nodded and admitted it. Master, Madam knows that Yuzhong City is in the midst of a war. She has been praying for Master in the temple day and night. She hasn't eaten or come out for 25 days. King Yu, King Yu. Gahan lowered his head and his body actually trembled. This was the first time in his life that he was afraid. This was the first time he felt that he didn't have the face to see a woman. Chapter 570. In the Ming Dynasty, large families would set up a small Buddhist hall in the east. They would usually worship Guanyin Bodhisattva. The elders of the family would kneel and pray in the Buddhist hall every day, praying for the prosperity of their family and the safety of their descendants. Gahan's house was no exception. Moreover, the Buddhist hall wasn't small. It was as big as 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms. Gahan pushed aside the curtains and saw King Yu's thin figure kneeling in front of Guanyin Bodhisattva, chanting. Actually, the sword lady in the game couldn't be fat or thin. King Yu hadn't eaten for 25 days. Even if he hadn't eaten for 25 years, he wouldn't lose any weight. However, in Gahan's eyes, he clearly felt that King Yu was much thinner and more haggard. Bodhisattva, please bless me. Please bless the military governor well outside the game. Please bless Yuzhong City to survive this calamity. Please bless him to be able to come back and see King Yu. King Yu sincerely prayed to the Bodhisattva. These words made Gahan feel especially touched and awkward. He didn't know what to do. There's no need to pray to them. King Yu, I'm back. Gahan took a step forward and pulled King Yu into his embrace. He sniffed the scent on King Yu's body. There was an inexplicable sour smell. This fellow hadn't bathed for 25 days, right? The moment King Yu was hugged by Gahan, his body trembled and became extremely stiff. It was as if he had been frozen. After a while, he said, I'm back. I'm back. Gahan helped King Yu up from the ground. Perhaps because he had been kneeling for too long, he couldn't maintain his standing posture after Gahan helped him up. His body trembled, and he could only rely on Gahan's support to stand there. You don't need to help me. I can stand up myself. Even though his body was still trembling, King Yu was still stubborn and insisted on standing up by himself. If it was Gahan who had just entered the game, he would definitely listen to King Yu's words and let her go, leaving her to die on her own. But now, how could Gahan do such a thing? Instead, he hugged King Yu even tighter. Boring pervert, King Yu said hatefully, his face flushed from the corners of his eyes to the tips of his ears. Why didn't you die in Yuzhong City? I could have escaped from your clutches and didn't have to suffer like this. Why are you still being so stubborn at a time like this? Gahan hugged King Yu. If I really die, you won't be able to live either. You bastard, sob sob. Hearing Gahan's words, King Yu finally couldn't hold back his emotions and burst into tears in Gahan's arms. You pervert, shameless bastard. If you die, of course I won't be able to live. Gahan let King Yu vent his emotions in his arms. He cried for half an hour until King Yu was tired. Then, Gahan took out a carved wooden bed from his pocket and placed it in the temple hall. He carried King Yu to the bed. You must be tired. Rest here for a while. Have a good sleep. Gahan took out another quilt and covered King Yu with it. He carefully pinched the corner of the quilt. Have a good sleep. I have something to do with Song Hama. I'll come back to accompany you later. After saying that, Gahan was about to get up and leave. But as soon as he stood up, he felt the corner of his clothes being grabbed softly. King Yu's white and tender hand reached out from the quilt and grabbed the corner of Gahan's clothes. Her stubborn eyes were full of pleading as she looked at Gahan. Her small mouth opened and closed. It was hard to hear what she said, but Gohan could tell from her mouth that she said, "Don't go. Forget it. I don't lack this bit of time." Gohan sat down again. The two were silent for a while. Gohan was the first to break the silence. "You don't need to do this anymore. You can only rely on your own efforts. What does it have to do with those gods and Buddhas? Why do you need to beg them?" Gohan grabbed King Yu's hand and said, "Always ask for something." King Yu smiled. "Didn't you come back safely? But there's no need to ask for these things." Gohan glanced at the statue of Guanyin Bodhisattva. Take the Guanyin you worship, for example. He's not a god or Buddha that protects us. He's just a selfish, stinky Taoist, a universe-level Yuan Ko. Moreover, he's a man, yet he has the face to dress up as a woman. Guanyin Bodhisattva. This deity whom the descendants of Yin and Huang had once worshipped the most had actually appeared in the real world with the identity of Yuan Yin after the Great Calamity. As soon as she had appeared, she had sent a whole 3,000 commoners to the Western Pure Land of ultimate bliss. P.S. The author hesitated for a while about the Guanyin Bodhisattva, but he still explained it. After all, many readers might be Buddhists, and there might be some religious aspects involved. Therefore, the author would like to clarify that the Guanyin Bodhisattva in the book only became Yuan Ko and slaughtered commoners because of the plot. It has nothing to do with the real Guanyin Bodhisattva. The author doesn't have any intention of slandering the Guanyin Bodhisattva. In addition, Guanyin Bodhisattva seemed to be the image of a natural female, but in reality, Guanyin Bodhisattva was 100% a man. Guanyin Bodhisattva was originally the 9th disciple of the primeval lord of Taoism, Taoist Si Hang. She was taken in by Taoist Kundi in the myriad immortal formation and became the Guanyin Bodhisattva in Buddhism. Taoist Si Hang didn't want to become a disciple of Buddhism, so he never used his real body. He only used a female incarnation to do things for Buddhism, accumulating virtue and doing good deeds. Most people saw Taoist Si Hang's female incarnation, so there were rumors that Guanyin Bodhisattva was a woman. Thinking about it carefully, this Guanyin Bodhisattva could be said to be the first trap in China's history. P.S. The author likes the setting of the Great Desolation, so all the settings of the deities in China are based on the Great Desolation. If there are readers who don't understand the Great Desolation, you can search it on Baidu or read novels about the Great Desolation, such as Buddha is the Way. However, the fact that Guanyin Bodhisattva was actually a man was not fake, because even in the Buddhist scriptures, Guanyin had the body of a man. In all the Buddhist scriptures before the Tang Dynasty, Guanyin had the body of a man, and the Buddha statue was also a male Buddhist statue. However, in the era of Wu Zetian, there was a monk who wanted to curry favor with Wu Zetian and spread Buddhism. Thus, he wrote a Buddhist scripture that said that Wu Zetian was actually the reincarnation of Guanyin Bodhisattva, the master of destiny, and Guanyin Bodhisattva was originally a woman. When Wu Zetian saw this, she was naturally very happy. Thus, she wantonly promoted Guanyin Bodhisattva and personally confirmed that Guanyin was a woman. With Wu Zetian's will, who in the world disobeyed? Thus, from Wu Zetian onwards, Guanyin Bodhisattva gradually became a woman. TSK. King Yu glanced at Gohan unhappily. Gohan knew that he had gone overboard. King Yu had prayed for him for 25 days out of goodwill. No matter what Guanyin was, King Yu's intentions were irrefutable. King Yu, I understand what you're thinking. I'll remember your feelings for me, Gohan. You prayed for me for 25 days, and I, Gohan, will remember it for the rest of my life. I won't let you down. Gohan's hand touched King Yu's face as he said this affectionately. King Yu's face became redder and redder. In the end, he covered his head with the blanket and said through the blanket, "Who prayed for you for 25 days? I just heard that Yuzhong City was attacked by Yuan Ko, so I prayed for all of Yuzhong City. You were just included in it. Who prayed for you?" AI. Even at this point, King Yu's mouth was still so stubborn. He didn't want to admit that he was praying for Gohan no matter what. Is that so? Hearing King Yu's words, Gohan's heart skipped a beat. He said with a pained tone, "I was wondering why I was paralyzed on the bed. So it was because you prayed for me. What, you're injured? paralyzed on the bed? When King Yu heard that Gahan was injured, he immediately pulled down the blanket and revealed a nervous face. How could this be? Why am I paralyzed? Didn't you say it's the med bay? Can't the med bay cure all diseases? This is the power of Nether River Patriarch. How can a normal med bay cure me? Gohan sighed and told him half the truth. My body is now filled with Nether River Patriarch's immortal power. I can't move anything except my head. The med bay and current medical technology can't do anything about this immortal power. I can only wait for it to dissipate. How could this be? When King Yu heard Gahan's condition, his face was full of sorrow and pain. It's all my fault. I'm lazy and only recited your name 999 times a day. If I worked harder and recited it 9,999 times, you would definitely. Thank you 999 times. Before King Yu could finish, Gohan lowered his head and kissed King Yu's lips. King Yu's eyes widened because Gohan's tongue came in without any warning. King Yu wanted to resist, but when his tongue came into contact with Gahan's, he and Gahan were entangled. Their wet tongues entangled each other like a butterfly knot. Annoying. King Yu hugged Gahan's waist and pulled Gahan, who was sitting on the bed, onto him. He grabbed Gahan's soft flesh tightly. The two of them were separated by a blanket for a long time before Gahan got up from King Yu's body. All right, King Yu, you're too tired. Rest well. I'm going to find Song Hama. Gohan started to tidy up his messy clothes as if he had just finished something. Chapter 571. Wait, Queen Yu sat up from the bed. Why do you have to go now? Can't you contact Song Hama in real life? In the game, can't you stay with me? Only the heavens knew how much courage it took for Queen Yu to say that. This caused Gahan to stop. After a while, Gahan shook her head and gave Queen Yu a warm smile. Some things can only be explained in the game. Queen Yu, don't worry. I'm heavily injured this time, and I'll have to lie in bed for at least 10 days. I'll stay with you in the game during this time. Gahan was right. In the siblings' house, Gahan had nothing to do but play the game. If he didn't stay in a game, Gahan didn't know how to pass the time. Okay, then hurry up and leave. Go to your things. I'll sleep for a while. When Queen Yu heard that Gahan was going to stay with her in the game for 10 days, she was overjoyed and forgot about Gahan's impending departure. She urged Gahan to leave with a look of disgust. When Gahan really left, Queen Yu felt sleepy. She hadn't slept for 25 days. If she wasn't a sword maiden, she wouldn't have been able to hold on. Idiot, I could have improved a bit more. I was mentally prepared. Queen Yu muttered as she slowly fell asleep. I really hope that Gohan can become a famed sword wielder. I really hope that I can be with Gahan forever in real life. After leaving his house, Gahan walked on the streets of Yuzhong City. He found bright red flags hanging everywhere with Yuzhong City's emblem on them. All the walls had turned blood red, and golden words were written on them. Good luck, Yuzhong. Gahan checked the forum again. All the popular posts were related to the attack in Yuzhong City, such as discussing the battle situation, analyzing why Yuzhong City was victorious, reviewing the entire battle situation, commending the heroic deeds of the sword-bearers, discussing the gains and losses of the attack, and redebating the safety of the quantum teleportation array. Of course, the most shocking news was that the military governor's real identity had been discovered. It was said that the sword-bearers said that Yuzhong City could not be saved. Yuan Ko, who was in the core zone, could break through to the normal zone at any time. It was the military governor who descended from the sky like a god, leading more than 1,000 sword-bearers into the core area, protecting the last hope of Yuzhong City and successfully saving the entire city. However, the news of the military governor's identity was strictly controlled by Yuzhong City officials. The sword-bearers who knew the true identity of the military governor were warned by Yuzhong City. Before the military governor officially announced his identity, no one was allowed to spread the name of the military governor. However, Gohan noticed that there was a very popular post that listed several strong candidates for the military governor, such as Ku Rakin, the son of the deceased sword immortal Baiju, and Lei Mu, who led the rescue of the sword-bearers. Even Liu Nianling's name appeared, because it was said that Liunyun Ling was in Yuzhong City at the time. It was only at the last post that Gahan saw Gahan's name appear. According to the original poster, Gahan was the most likely candidate. This was because Gahan had announced to all of Yuzhong City that he had become the temporary commander-in-chief of Yuzhong City, and that he had opened the emergency evacuation system of Yuzhong City. However, ever since Yuzhong City regained control, there was news of Gahan's disappearance. Yuzhong City's TV station broadcasted Gahan's missing notice 30 times a day. It was likely that Gahan had died at the hands of Yuan Ko, and even his corpse had been eaten. At the end of the post, combined with the fact that he had not been online for 10 days, the original poster began to suspect that the military governor was Gahan and concluded that the military governor was also dead. There are still some smart people in this world. Gahan curled his lips, closed the forum, and opened his address book. What disappointed Gahan was that Song Hama was not online. She had also not been online for more than 10 days. This proved that Song Hama had not been online since Yuzhong City was restored. Toad, nothing must happen to you. An ominous feeling welled up in Gahan's heart. Could it be that Song Hama had died in the Great Attack? After Gahan ended his communication with Song Hama, he had not contacted Song Hama again. Gahan thought that since he had opened the evacuation system, Song Hama must have been safely in the shelter and nothing could have happened to him. Could it be that something had happened after that? Maybe Toad just didn't have time to log in. This guy might be looking for me day and night, and it's possible that he didn't have time to log in. Gahan thought silently. He looked at the other active names in the communication. Among them, Bright Moon's name was the most prominent. F*CK. It's you, military governor. I thought you were dead. As soon as the communication was connected, Bright Moon of the Year started talking. TSK, when I saw Gahan go missing, I really thought you were dead. I cried for 4 to 5 days because of you. You have to compensate me for my tears. Gahan did not care about Ming Yu's crazy words. By the way, where are you right now? If you are, hurry up and look for Sword Immortal Cloud Sky. TSK. All the primetime TV stations are broadcasting your missing person notices. That's at least tens of millions in advertising fees. Bright Moon of the Year said with a sigh, I know all this. I'm in some trouble now, and it's not convenient for me to show up. Sister Bright Moon, please don't spread my news around. Gahan explained and then asked, Sister Bright Moon, I just want to ask you, how is Toad? Has he contacted you in real life? Toad? You don't know about Toad. Bright Moon of the Year first sighed in shock, then fell silent for a long time. After a while, she said, At first, I was also wondering why Toad didn't come online. Later, I called his house and found out that Toad is in a bad situation. What's wrong? What's wrong with Toad? Gahan asked anxiously. Toad was Gahan's only best friend. In Gahan's heart, Toad's position was almost on par with his sword lady's. He's fine. He came out after staying in a medical pod for a few days. However, Toad's cloud cast iron was broken. I heard that Toad was the last to cover the retreat of the civilians. He was surrounded by more than 10 Yuan Ko at the same time. It was Cloud Cast Iron who sacrificed his life and used his body to block in front of Toad. Then, he kicked Toad into the escape tunnel, leaving Cloud Cast Iron outside. After coming out of the shelter, there were only 2 pieces of the cast cloud iron left. That's why Toad hasn't said a word or eaten anything for the past few days. It's like he's in a vegetative state. If it weren't for his parents forcefully feeding him nutrient solutions, Toad would have starved to death. Finally, from Bright Moon of the Year, Song Hama's current situation, Gahan let out a sigh of relief. At the same time, he fell into sorrow. Although Song Hama didn't have a good relationship with Cloud Cast Iron on the surface, and they often quarreled, Cloud Cast Iron's position in Song Hama's heart was undeniable. Gahan was even sure that Song Hama's feelings for Cloud Cast Iron were much deeper than his feelings for Qingpin, Diyu, Heavenly Reliance, Yu Wang, and any of the other sword ladies. Cloud Cast Iron's broken was undoubtedly a huge blow to Song Hama. I should think of a way to cheer Toad up. Maybe I should go comfort Toad. As Gahan thought of this, he said to Bright Moon of the Year, Sister Bright Moon, can I trouble you to call Toad's family again and ask Toad to come online? I want to talk to him. Oh, no problem. After saying that, Bright Moon of the Year hung up the call. The address book quickly showed that Bright Moon of the Year had gone offline. Gahan waited for a while before Bright Moon of the Year came online again. However, Bright Moon of the Year said very helplessly that Song Hama's family had moved. That phone number had been canceled, and Song Hama didn't answer anyone's calls, so there was no way to send a message to Song Hama. Since Song Hama couldn't be counted on, Gahan could only think of another way to contact Lulei. Asking Bright Moon of the Year seemed like a good choice, but Gahan didn't want her to get involved in these things. Putting aside Song Hama and Bright Moon of the Year, there were actually many ways to contact Lulei. For example, using Military Governor's account to post a post in the forum was also a good choice. Lulei knew that he was Military Governor. As long as he saw Military Governor's post, Lulei would know that he had appeared in the game, and Lulei would immediately enter the game to contact him. Gahan immediately logged into the game forum. Then, he tragically discovered a problem. His helmet was a very old one, so he couldn't use a Smurf account to post. Because Military Governor's name had been registered in the forum, it was a fake account. Therefore, the official verified Military Governor's account was Gahan Smurf, Military Governor 250. Only by using this account to post would he be able to attract everyone's attention. However, this old helmet didn't support the use of Smurf accounts in the forum. Even if Gahan used his main account to post, he would be directly ignored. There was no way he could attract Lulei's attention. Looks like I'll have to break a dungeon record. Gahan could only use his last resort, which was to break a dungeon record. That way, he would be able to receive the treatment of a system broadcast. This way, all the players would naturally know that Military Governor had appeared again. Only then would the news reach Lulei's ears as soon as possible. Chapter 572. Military Governor scanned the instance dungeon tree. Gahan could only enter 4 instance dungeons at the moment. Among the 4 instance dungeons, 3 of the records had already been raised to the limit. Although Gahan was confident that he could break the records, luck and teammates played a big part in it. Gahan did not think that he could break the records in a short period of time. That was why Gahan had no choice but to choose the only solo instance dungeon out of the 4. It was also the instance dungeon that Gahan felt had a lot of room for improvement, the Great Search of Wuhan. If Gahan had a choice, he would never enter the instance dungeon of his own accord. Once he entered the instance dungeon and saw that once innocent face, Gahan would feel that he was worse than a pig or a dog. The Great Search of Wuhan, as the name suggested, was an instance dungeon that involved searching and battling in Wuhan. It did not seem like there was anything that was worth Gahan's attention. However, if everyone knew the timeline of the instance dungeon, they would probably not think so. The instance dungeon would take place 6 days after the apocalypse. Let me remind everyone that the starting instance dungeon of Sword Maiden Online, King Yu Gojin Jian, also took place in Wuhan. Do you understand? The Wuhan Great Search Instance Dungeon was actually the sequel to the King of Yu, Gojin Jian. It took place the day after the King of Yu, Gojin Jian. The main character of the story was none other than the Great Sword Ancestor, Fleeting Calendar, who was stabbed to death by Gahan in the game. Gahan had already broken free from the extremely dark situation he was in 2 months ago. Gahan had once thought that as long as he could obtain strength, it would be natural for him to stab Kinzu to death. Now that he thought about it, he would despise himself. However, Gahan had never regretted his choice. If he did not make this choice, how could he be where he was now? Everything in the world had its own destiny. After all, this was just a game. However, Gahan did not want to face Fleeting Calendar. He did not want to see Kinzu's once kind and pure face. However, in order to contact Lulei, Gahan had no choice but to enter the instance dungeon. System notification. Player Military Governor. Welcome to the Wuhan Great Search Instance Dungeon. Objective. Protect and accompany Fleeting Year Calendar as he searches for survivors in Wuhan City. The basic objective is to complete the quest with 100 survivors. The more survivors you search for within 8 hours, the higher the score. System notification. Quest 1 has been updated. Kinzu's whereabouts. You are now at the location of the former water caltrop Lake Wanda Center in Wuhan City. Please find the Kinzu calendar that is currently around the Wuhan Museum. According to historical records, after the fleeting year calendar synchronized with the Yu King Go Jian Jian, the Virgin Mary's heart began to act up. She began to search for other survivors in WH City and attempted to establish a survivor camp. The first day of the fleeting year calendar was spent searching for survivors in Wuhan City. As a player, Gahan joined the fleeting year calendar's team and helped it find more than 100 survivors. This was a very simple quest. Even if you were trash, as long as you followed the fleeting year calendar and listened to its commands, even if you didn't kill a single monster, you would still be able to complete the quest. If you wanted to get a high score, you had to search and find as many survivors as possible within 8 hours. Generally speaking, as long as you found more than 300 people, you would get an S rating. Finding more than 400 people would get an SS rating. Finding more than 500 people would get an SSS rating. The current record was set by a player named Zhang Yi. He had saved a total of 621 survivors in 8 hours. This record had been kept for almost 30 years. In order to find a way to break through the sword of the Yu King, Gohan had tried to find clues from other instance dungeons related to the fleeting year calendar. This instance dungeon right after the sword of the Yu King naturally caught Gohan's attention. The reason why Gohan felt that there was a possibility of breaking this record was because according to the information Gohan had obtained from the dungeon, there should be 650 survivors that could be found within 8 hours. The key was how to get these survivors to follow the fleeting year calendar and listen to his commands. During the apocalypse, the human heart was very complicated. There were many people with strange thoughts. Some of them didn't believe in the fleeting year calendar and were unwilling to join the fleeting year calendar's team. Some of them wanted to leave after joining the fleeting year calendar and find their own safety. There were even some who wanted to kill the fleeting year calendar and steal the sword of the Yu King. In short, besides finding people, the key to this quest was to control the human heart. Over the years, there were many players who tried to break this record. Unfortunately, the human heart was hard to predict. If they weren't careful, many people would die. As a result, no one had succeeded in breaking this record for the past 30 years. But on the other hand, as long as the human heart was well controlled, this record was not out of reach. Gohan's current location was near the once bustling Wanda Plaza. Half of the Wanda Plaza had been destroyed, and only the Wanda Cinema remained standing. Dear readers, please put yourselves in my shoes. If you were a player who had just entered this dungeon, what would you do? I believe that most players would not hesitate to follow the system's instructions and go to the Wuhan Museum to find the fleeting year calendar and meet up with him. If that was the case, then everyone would have missed out on a large number of survivors. According to the information, there were still 30 survivors in the Wanda Cinema. If they didn't bring these 30 people along and instead went to find the fleeting year calendar, then in another 10 minutes, there would be a fight between the survivors in the Wanda Cinema. Only half of the 30 people would survive. Moreover, it would attract the attention of Yuan Ko, and the final outcome would be that all the survivors would be wiped out. If these 30 survivors all died, then the goal of surpassing 621 people would be impossible. Because the total number of people was only 650, Gohan had to bring these 30 survivors out. At this moment, in the 4th floor of the Wanda Cinema, in the smallest VIP hall, almost all of the 30 survivors were in this hall. They sat on the chairs in the cinema, hugging their arms and shivering. They had already stayed in this hall for 5 to 6 days. At the beginning, they relied on some of the food in the VIP hall. On the second day, they risked their lives to leave the VIP hall and bring back all the food and popcorn. After eating for another 2 days, they had not eaten anything for 3 whole days. Although it was autumn, and it wasn't very cold, their bodies were severely lacking in sugar, and their body's ability to maintain heat had also decreased. The cold caused by hunger caused them to shiver. Of course, hunger was only part of the reason. The more important reason was the fear in their hearts. All of them understood that if they continued to stay here, Even if they weren't killed by the monsters, they would still starve to death. They had to find a way to leave this place and find food. F***, you trash, stand up. Suddenly, a fierce-looking guy with a bald head and a body full of all kinds of strange patterns stood up from the comfortable leather chair. At first glance, it was obvious that he was a big bully. Behind him, a few of his equally fierce subordinates also stood up. This big bully was called Wan Chao, and he was the leader of the bullies in this area. He was in charge of the businesses of dozens of places nearby. He was also a bully who climbed up step by step from a young age. 6 days ago, he brought his 3 subordinates to find trouble with the manager of this cinema, because the manager had slept with his brother's girlfriend. In the end, before they could find a manager, they encountered Yuan Ko's invasion. Wan Chao was very smart. When he saw that the hall had been invaded by Yuan Ko, he immediately rushed into the VIP hall with the tightest door. After entering the VIP hall, Wan Chao did not say anything and immediately closed the door of the VIP hall. Then he blocked all the things he could find inside the door, completely sealing the door of the VIP hall. At that time, there were 24 guests in the VIP hall watching the latest movie, The Avengers 9. There were also 2 service staff. They were all shocked by Wan Chao's sudden appearance. At first, when Wan Chao said that there was a monster invasion, these people thought that Wan Chao was crazy, saying that he couldn't distinguish between movies and reality. However, when Wan Chao grabbed a few people's heads and crawled to the only glass window in the VIP hall, through the glass window, they saw a scene of broken limbs and blood on the ground outside. Only then did these people completely believe Wan Chao's words. Relying on the fear brought about by this incident, as well as the deterrent ability of Wan Chao's 3 subordinates, and Wan Chao's response at that time, Wan Chao established his prestige among these 30 people. He successfully became the manager and leader of these 30 people. However, this position of manager and leader could collapse at any time. Although Wan Chao was smart at the critical moment, he was still a lawless bully, especially since he was very lustful. He would not be happy without a woman every night. Therefore, on the first night after the apocalypse, he set his eyes on the 2 unlucky waitresses. In public, he raped the 2 waitresses onto the screen. Then, he threw the 2 waitresses to his 3 subordinates. In the cinema, under the movie screen, under the eyes of everyone, the 4 of them had a great time together. This gave Wan Chao an extremely perverted sense of pleasure. Therefore, on the 2nd day, the 3rd day, the 4th day, and even just now, Wan Chao, who had nothing to do in the VIP hall all day, had already raped all the women in the VIP hall. These women were not lonely and friendless like the 2 waitresses. Their husbands, relatives, and friends were all in the VIP hall. If it weren't for Wan Chao's murderous aura, the entire VIP hall would have exploded. Their loved ones being raped, hunger, a hopeless future, all kinds of emotions intertwined together, forming a bomb that could explode at any time. And the source of this bomb, Wan Chao and others did not know. Or, even if he knew, he would not have the mood to care about these things. Anyway, there was no hope of survival, so it was better to have fun before dying. It seemed that what Wan Chao was going to say next would ignite the emotions of the entire VIP hall. Chapter 573. If we want to live, we must find food. This was Wan Chao's first sentence. This sentence was reasonable, so it didn't cause the crowd to resist. But when Wan Chao said the second sentence, the whole scene went out of control. The few of you leave here, go to the supermarket downstairs and find enough food. It was this sentence that completely ignited everyone's emotions. Wan Chao called out a total of 10 people. These 10 people were all men, and all of them had relatives or friends who stayed here. Wan Chao's idea was very simple. As long as their relatives were here, these men would not run away and would obediently bring food back. But Wan Chao underestimated the courage of these people. Since these people saw their women being defiled by Wan Chao and did not dare to resist, how could they have the courage to leave this relatively safe VIP area and run downstairs to find food? Only God knows what the situation downstairs was and whether those horrible monsters were still there. What was worse was that Yuan Chao didn't reveal any intention of letting his subordinates follow him out. "Oh, we are all beasts. Not only did we let you F***ck our women, we also want to be your cattle and horse and feed you." The reason why these men tolerated Yuan Chao's insults to their women was mainly because they thought that Yuan Chao and the others were strong, brave, and resourceful and could lead them to survive in this post-apocalyptic world. Now, it seemed that Yuan Chao just wanted to be a vampire that rode on their bodies. How could these people not feel angry? But when they found that their patience and compromise were unnecessary, their anger exploded. "Brother Yuan, we are a little scared. Why don't you lead us to find food?" A man who looked like a student stood up and said he was also one of the people that Yuan Chao had just called out, and his girlfriend was lying naked on the ground, her face ashen. "If I tell you to go, just go. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" Yuan Chao did not realize his crisis and said fiercely, "I want to protect the safety of this place. Do you understand? I want to protect your girlfriend, or else they will be eaten by those monsters. Do you understand?" After that, Yuan Chao kicked the student's girlfriend's nipple very viciously, making the student's blood boil. Whenever there was a big change in society, the first to jump out was often the students, because their blood had not completely cooled down. Therefore, when Yuan Chao insulted his girlfriend again, and when he remembered that he might die in the food hunt later, the student completely exploded. F***CKU, Yuan Chao you $% hashtag, and what else do you have other than insulting us? F***CKU at hashtag, yin asterisk, the student poured out all the anger he had accumulated over the past few days. "Damn it, little bastard. I think you're tired of living." Yuan Chao picked up an iron rod that he had removed from a chair and was about to throw it at the student. He felt that it was necessary for him to establish his might once again. He wanted to use this little brat's life to demonstrate his might. Unfortunately, what he didn't know was that the students today were not as simple as the students in the 70s and 80s. "Everyone, listen to me. This Yuan Chao asked us to go downstairs to find something, just to let us die in the hands of those monsters, so that he can occupy our women forever. As long as we go out, we will definitely die." This student usually liked to read online novels. At this time, this plot appeared a lot in the online novels. The protagonists in the online novels, when faced with this kind of situation, would mobilize the surrounding onlookers and use the anger of all the crowd to deal with Yuan Chao. Sure enough, when the others heard the student's words, they all fell into deep thought. Some of them were even eager to try, but no one knew what they wanted to do. For the first time, Yuan Chao felt that the situation was somewhat out of control. If he was smart, he would have suspended the order to send people out. Unfortunately, Yuan Chao decided to kill this student and use his blood to scare everyone first. "Everyone, listen to me. We have more than 10 people. Yuan Chao only has 4 people, and he doesn't have a gun, so there is nothing to be afraid of. Let's go together, kill this beast, and avenge our women." After saying that, the student was the first to pounce on Yuan Chao, who was caught off guard, and Yuan Chao fell to the ground. There was such a psychological case. When a wall was clean without any graffiti, the wall could remain clean for a long time. But once someone drew graffiti on the wall would be covered with all kinds of graffiti in a short period of time. This case was also suitable to be used here. When the student was the first to pounce on Yuan Chao, the others who were filled with anger rushed to follow the student. They restrained Yuan Chao tightly, and all kinds of punches greeted Yuan Chao's body. When Yuan Chao's 3 subordinates saw this scene, they immediately picked up their iron rods and wanted to support Yuan Chao. Therefore, a chaotic battle broke out in the VIP lounge, and the fight became fiercer and fiercer. According to the players' intelligence, if no one appeared to stop them, the 4 gangsters would be beaten to death, and 6 ordinary people would die. This movement would also attract the attention of the surrounding Yuan Ko, and all the humans would be killed. At this critical moment, everyone heard a loud bang. They all turned their heads and saw that the door, which was tightly blocked by all kinds of chairs and iron, had been blown open. "Oh no! The monsters are here!" Everyone screamed in fear. They thought that the monsters had come to kill them. "Don't panic, everyone. I'm not a monster. I'm sent by the government to save everyone. Unexpectedly, a man's voice came from the door. Everyone looked and found that it was a young man in camouflage clothes. He looked valiant and dignified, and he exuded a strong aura. He held a long sword in his hand, and he didn't look like a monster. Wait, what did this person say? He's sent by the government? The government is here to save us? Hearing this, everyone's hearts immediately surged with infinite hope. That's great. The government is still here, and the government has sent people to save them. Those monsters must have been destroyed by the government. With this thought in mind, the entire VIP lounge was instantly filled with hope. On the broken street, Gahan walked in front, and there were 30 humans behind him. If one looked closely, they could see that the 30 humans were divided into two groups. One of the groups had the smallest number of people, only 4 people, and they were following behind Gahan like dogs, constantly flattering him. The other 26 people were staring at these 4 people with resentment, and they could not wait to crush their bones and scatter their ashes. These 30 people were the survivors that Guhan rescued from the VIP lounge. After combining a lot of information about this dungeon, Gahan realized that if he wanted to save as many survivors as possible, then his identity was very important. If he only said that he was a sword wielder, most of the survivors would not take him seriously. They might even think of killing him and robbing him of the sword in his hand. In the past, most players would show off their strength in front of these survivors, using the strength of their sword maidens to suppress the ambitions of these survivors. However, they had forgotten that the strength of an ancient sword wielder was only a few times that of a normal person. If they were to really fight with a normal person, they might not be able to gain the upper hand even if they were surrounded by normal people. More importantly, Yuan Ko was not afraid of bullets, and he would not be hit by them. However, the sword wielder was still a human, and they were still afraid of things like bullets. Although the protection of a closed-fitting shield could block dozens of bullets, it was not enough. But what if someone used a machine gun to shoot at the sword wielder? During the early stages of the apocalypse, a large number of sword wielder died at the hands of humans. Of course, with Guhan's current strength, even 100 machine guns would not be able to do anything to Gahan. However, this would definitely cause the survivors to break up, and his goal of saving more than 621 survivors would fail. Therefore, Gahan thought of a better way to control these survivors. Therefore, Guhan came up with an idea that no one had ever thought of before, and that was to give himself the identity of a mysterious government agency on himself. Thanks to the strict control of social order by the Chinese government before the apocalypse, the government was still a powerful existence in the hearts of all the Chinese people. It had only been a few days since the apocalypse, and such thoughts were still deeply rooted in the hearts of these survivors. Especially when they heard that the government still existed and that they had even rebuilt a refuge in a base deep in the mountains, these people were even more afraid of the government, and they were even more hopeful. Everyone hoped to enter a refuge protected by the government. Naturally, they obeyed Gahan, who claimed to be a member of the government's superpower organization, the Huasha Dragon Group. They did not dare to have any thoughts of rebelling. This was especially true when Gahan used the sword chi of the heavenly sword to cut a collapsed boulder, blocking the wand of cinema into pieces, and killed a dozen blood-colored demon wolves that were charging at him. After that, they became even more obedient to Gahan. If Gahan had asked to F***CK these naked women, these survivors probably would not have objected. The only thing that made these survivors unhappy was that when they proposed to kill Wan Chao and his 4 men who had committed heinous crimes, Guhan had clearly rejected them. I don't have the right to judge anyone. Only the law has the right to judge them. Before they are judged by the court, they are still citizens protected by the government. Guhan said righteously, words that even he himself did not believe. Although this made the other survivors very disappointed, they vaguely trusted Gahan even more. In the post-apocalyptic world where the law had collapsed, this person with such great power still used the law as his code of conduct. This person must be someone from the government. There was no mistake, and there was nothing safer than being under the protection of such a person. Chapter 574. By the time Gohan found the calendar, there were already 72 survivors behind him. These were the survivors that Gohan had saved along the way. Of course, the reason why Gohan was able to find so many people was because their locations had already been marked in various guides. However, in the eyes of the survivors that Gohan had saved, Gohan had become an omnipotent god. This self-proclaimed member of the Chinese dragon group seemed to have the ability to see through things and had the terrifying sword energy of a sword immortal. With a single slash, he could cut through any cement and save the people trapped inside. It was as if he already knew that there were survivors inside. With such a display of strength, Gohan's identity became unquestionable. None of the survivors dared to go against Gohan's wishes. They all hoped that Gohan would bring them to the government's refuge in the mountains. Of course, there were still some discordant factors, such as Wang Chao, who was trying his best to curry favor with Gohan. Gohan's actions along the way had made him believe that the government still existed. Although Gohan did not punish him, he did say that he would hand him over to the law. Wang Chao was a person who knew his own limits. He knew that with the crimes he had committed in the apocalypse, he would most likely be sentenced to death in the sanctuary. Therefore, he was secretly planning something with his subordinates. "Leader, it's not good. There's a battle ahead." Wang Chao, who had been serving Gohan like a dog, nervously pointed at the dusty battlefield in front of them. Although he had already seen Gohan's powerful combat abilities on the way here, he still couldn't help but feel fear when he saw those monsters that ignored all terrain and obstacles. Their attacks would all miss, and their attacks would always hit flesh. If not for a human like Gohan who could defeat them, Wang Chao really thought that the human race would have gone extinct from this world. "I see it." Gohan did not even look at Wang Chao. Although he did not kill Wang Chao, it did not mean that Gohan was interested in him. This man had to be used to his fullest potential. Now was not the best time to kill him. It was better to wait a little longer. "You guys take your time. I'll go first." After saying that, Gohan leaped into the air and jumped into the battle in front of him. On one side of the battle was a girl that Gohan was very familiar with. She was wielding a bronze sword and was facing off against 3 demon cats. These demon cats were not very strong and were only at the level of a ghost-level Yuan Ko. Logically speaking, this girl, who was 1 realm higher than them, should have been able to eliminate all these cat demons with ease. However, these demon cats were very agile. On the contrary, the sword-wielding girl's sword skills were extremely clumsy. She couldn't hit the demon cats at all. On the contrary, the demon cats kept leaving all kinds of scratches on her body, causing her personal shield to tremble constantly. Behind the girl, a handsome young man was nervously looking at the battlefield. Behind him, there were more than 40 survivors of different ages and expressions. Among them, many survivors were secretly looking at the surrounding environment. It seemed that once the girl lost the battle, these survivors would immediately escape from here. Suddenly, a demon cat that was entangled with the girl broke away from the girl's battle range and rushed towards the survivors. "The monster is coming. Everyone run!" Several men shouted, and the survivors immediately scattered. Only the young man anxiously shouted, "Everyone, don't run, don't run. It's more dangerous to scatter. I will definitely protect everyone." Unfortunately, the young man's words were useless, and the survivors still scattered in all directions without any regard for their lives. If no one appeared at this time, then it was believed that these more than 40 survivors would have run away completely. At this critical moment, a golden light flashed in the sky, and a sword came from the west, tearing the entire sky apart. The demon cat that was in a state of pouncing was split into 2 by this golden sword energy and was directly killed. The remaining sword energy rushed towards the other 2 demon cats that were besieging the girl. The demon cats were the most cunning Yuan Ko. After these 2 demon cats let out 2 cute meows, they immediately drilled into the depths of the ruins and disappeared in the blink of an eye. "We're saved." The young man and the girl looked on in shock, unable to believe that the 3 monsters that they fought so hard against were chased away by a single sword energy. Faintly, from the direction of the sword energy, under the illumination of the sun, A somewhat dazzling man was walking towards them step by step. This young man was naturally Kinzu, and this girl was naturally Yuan. System notification, Mission 1 completed. You have found Kinzu. System notification, main mission updated. Mission 2, search Hankow train station. There are a total of 120 survivors hidden in Hankow train station. Please find them and persuade them to join you and Kinzu's team. Big Brother. Hero, thank you for your help. Fleeting year calendar jogged to Guhan's side. His forehead was covered in sweat. It was obvious that he had suffered quite a fright just now. No problem. We're all in the same boat. We should help each other out. Seeing Fleeting Calendar's familiar face again, Guhan couldn't help but recall the scene 2 months ago when he stabbed Fleeting Calendar to death in the same Yuzhong city. Guhan couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. It was really difficult to face this sword ancestor who was full of saintliness. By the way, bro, which special ops team are you from? Why haven't I seen you before? Guhan suddenly asked a question that stunned Fleeting Time as he cast aside his bad mood. Hero, what do you mean? Why don't I understand? Fleeting Calendar asked timidly. You really don't understand? Guhan looked at Fleeting Calendar carefully, grabbed his wrist, and pinched it before pretending to understand. I know, so you're a wild sword bearer. You didn't join Huaxia Dragon Group. Huaxia Dragon Group. Fleeting Time Calendar was still a child. After all, he grew excited when he heard the name China Dragon Group. Hero, I've read a novel called China Dragon Group before. It turns out that everything in the novel is true. What novel? That story was made up by those otaku web novelists. The real Dragon Group is not like this. Guhan rubbed Fleeting Calendar's head. At this moment, King Yu had just returned to Kinzu's side. King Yu looked at Guhan in confusion. He was different from King Yu's current arrogant personality. The current King Yu was closer to a shy personality. She seemed to be afraid of Guhan's sword aura. She stood timidly behind Kinzu and pulled on Kinzu's sleeve, looking like a shy wife. Are you a sword mistress too? King Yu mustered up his courage and said blankly. So there's a man among us. Should I call you Swordman? Ahem, I'm the sword master. Forget it. I won't be able to explain this in a short time. Go gather the survivors first. If they get separated, they'll be in danger. Guhan had just climbed up from King Yu's body, and now he saw another King Yu who looked exactly like him but didn't recognize him. Guhan's emotions were complicated, so he took the initiative to gather the survivors first to avoid any awkwardness with King Yu. In the beginning, Guhan was just using King Yu. Guhan wasn't interested in the relationship between King Yu and Kinzu. Even if King Yu and Kinzu had pledged their undying love, Guhan wouldn't care. But for some reason, when he saw King Yu standing beside Kinzu and pulling on Kinzu's sleeve, Guhan felt his heart twitch. Although he knew that these were just game data, Guhan still felt uncomfortable. Only when they separated did Guhan feel better. I don't like this feeling, Guhan said. System notification. The total number of survivors you save has reached 117, meeting the minimum requirement of 100, reaching F rank dungeon evaluation. You can shout, I want to leave, to automatically end the dungeon and return to the dungeon completion center. You can also continue to challenge higher achievements in the dungeon. Guhan heard these system notifications. Of course, Guhan wouldn't choose to leave the dungeon now. Actually, there was no need for Kinzu and the others to gather the survivors. Seeing the cat demons killed by a mysterious sword aura, the survivors that escaped all ran back. They even took the initiative to join Guhan's team. Obviously, they felt that Guhan, who was powerful and could release sword aura, was more reliable. He was much better than the little brat who didn't even have a hair on his mouth and the cold girl. They're all snobbish people. Brother, Fleeting Calendar fought so hard to protect them. It's not worth it. The only person who did not join Guhan's team was a survivor who was younger than Fleeting Calendar. He looked at the snobbish people with disdain and said angrily, You're wrong, Yu Hao. That hero is indeed stronger than us. He can protect these humans better. We have nothing to complain about. Fleeting Calendar patted Yu Hao's head. Let's go and meet that hero. He's the first of my kind that I've met. I have a lot of questions to ask him. What? If only I could be like them. Yu Hao pouted in dissatisfaction when he saw his idol running off to look for the hero, but he still followed after him. Chapter 575. It was important to kill the 3 demon cats as soon as possible. If they could not finish the battle within 5 minutes, many of the fleeing survivors would die at the hands of Yuan Ko. If even one of them died, Gahan might not be able to break the dungeon record. As Gahan was commanding the survivors to merge into one, he saw Kinzu walking towards him with 2 other people. Gahan knew that Kinzu had something to ask him. Of course, he had already prepared the answer in his heart. Everyone is tired. Let's rest here for a while. Gahan gestured for the survivors to rest as he walked towards Kinzu and the others. He pulled Kinzu to a corner and smiled. I knew you would come looking for me. Tell me, what do you want to ask me? What's going on with me? Fleeting Calendar's eyes were filled with doubt. Hero, are you the same as me? Why didn't you see your... Or are you also born from someone else's stomach? Fleeting Calendar felt so ashamed that his head was stuck to his stomach. Ha ha ha, don't call me hero. Just call me military governor. Gohan laughed. You're only half right. We are indeed the same kind of people. However, I did not jump out from someone else's stomach. Just like you, I'm a sword wielder. The sword in my hand is the same as your king of Yuzgo Jian sword. We are both sword maidens. Sword wielder? Fleeting Calendar's ears twitched. Mr. Military Governor, are people like us called sword wielder? That's right. Guhan could not be bothered to continue the conversation in this question and answer format. Instead, he said systematically, people like us who synchronize with the famous sword since ancient times and help the birth of the sword lady, and synchronize with the sword lady, are called sword bearers. Guhan roughly explained the situation of the sword bearer, and then made up a story about the situation of the world. The gist of it was that there had already been sword bearers before the Great Calamity, and the government had then gathered them together to form the Huaxia Dragon Group. He was the person in charge of the Huaxia Dragon Group in the entire Huaxia region. Currently, the government had set up a temporary base outside of WH City, and he was responsible for bringing the survivors to the temporary base. The reason why Gahan made up these excuses was to use the government's name to control the calendar. According to the normal storyline, Fleeting Year Calendar would be the leader of the team, and he would be in charge of the actions of the survivors. This was not good news for Gahan, who was determined to break the record. Once Fleeting Year Calendar's saintly nature flared up, not only would he not be able to save more people, but he would also cause the deaths of the survivors that he had already saved. This was something that Gahan would not allow to happen. Therefore, the reason why Gahan made up the identity of the Huaxia Dragon Group was not just to control the survivors, but also to control Fleeting Year Calendar. As expected, when Kinzu heard Gahan's words, he no longer doubted Gahan's identity. Instead, he began to admire Gahan. Well then, Comrade Fleeting Year Calendar. Gohan suddenly stood up and looked at Fleeting Year Calendar with a serious expression. Fleeting Year Calendar was so shocked that he did not know what to do. He looked at Gohan nervously, not knowing what Gahan was going to do. Comrade Fleeting Year Calendar, I am now officially recruiting you on behalf of the Huaxia Dragon Group. I hope that you will join the Huaxia Dragon Group. In order to protect the people of China, you will fight against these damned monsters. Are you willing to give up your life? I. Fleeting Year Calendar became excited when he heard Gohan's words. In Fleeting Year Calendar's heart, it was his dream to join a mysterious organization, fight for humanity, and become a national hero. As expected, Fleeting Year Calendar replied without hesitation, I'm willing. Well, this scene looked a little like a marriage proposal. Very well. Comrade Fleeting Year, you are a hero. The people will not forget you. Gohan drew the heaven-reliant sword from his waist and spoke to Fleeting Year Calendar. Kneel. Fleeting Year Calendar knelt on the spot without hesitation. Gohan placed the heaven-reliant sword on Fleeting Year Calendar's shoulder and said in a solemn manner, I, the military governor of the Huaxia Dragon Group, the major general of the Huaxia Dragon Group's East China region, hereby announce that Comrade Fleeting Year Calendar has joined the Great Huaxia Dragon Group. From today onwards, Fleeting Year Calendar will be our friend, comrade, and brother. We will fight for the future of China. Comrade Fleeting Year Calendar, are you willing to follow the orders of the organization and fight for the future of China? Gohan asked Fleeting Year Calendar. I'm willing. Fleeting Year Calendar replied without hesitation. Very well. Since Gohan had given himself the title of Major General of the Huaxia Dragon Group's East China region, it meant that Fleeting Year Calendar would have to listen to Gohan's orders. With that, the entire team was now in Gohan's hands. Even Kenzu would have to listen to Gohan's orders. Comrade Fleeting Year Calendar, take a break for 10 minutes. We still need to save more people, Gohan said before leaving Fleeting Year Calendar. Boss, there's something wrong with that guy, Yuhao said as he moved closer to Fleeting Year Calendar after Gohan left. What's wrong, Lord Military Governor? Fleeting Year Calendar asked absent-mindedly. He was still immersed in the excitement of joining the Huaxia Dragon Group. I've seen soldiers before. My grandfather and father are both soldiers. He said that he's a major general, a soldier, but I can't sense any soldier's aura from him. He's not a soldier at all, Yuhao said suspiciously. Little Hao, that's where you're wrong. Fleeting Year Calendar said in a serious tone, he's not a normal soldier. His superpower organization is not a proper military organization. It's normal for them to have fewer rules. It's just like how a singer can be a major general. You can't expect someone to have the aura of a soldier, right? Yuhao could not refute Fleeting Year Calendar's words. He could only hope that the military governor was not a scammer. However, the military governor's strength was truly terrifying. There was no need for him to lie to Fleeting Year Calendar. At that moment, Gohan was in the midst of organizing a temporary management team for the survivors. Gohan was only one person. He could not effectively control the entire team. It would be bad if the survivors ran away when Gohan was fighting. That was why he needed to organize a management team for the survivors. With the help of this organization, he would be able to control the entire team. First, Gohan chose Wang Hao. This was because Wang Hao was a ruthless person. He was also afraid of being judged by Gohan. To Gohan, he was a very useful dog. Thus, Gohan made Wang Hao a thug in the organization. He asked Wang Chao to organize 10 people to maintain order in the team. He also gave Wang Chao 10 baseball bats as weapons. If any survivor tried to escape, Wang Hao would immediately catch them, teach them a lesson. Wang Chao was very excited when he heard Gohan's task. From his point of view, since Gohan was willing to use him, he would definitely not look for trouble with him. Who knows, he might even be able to hug Gohan's thighs. After reaching the temporary base, he would be able to become a manager. What's more, the task that Gohan gave him was to manage other people. This was the job that Wang Hao was most familiar with. But what Wang Chao didn't expect was that Gohan had found another rival of his, Wang Hao's rival. It was the student who had rushed up to fight him in the movie theater. What Wang Chao couldn't accept was that this student named Li Yi became his immediate superior. He also managed 10 people under him. He was in charge of the entire team's administrative work. According to the military governor's orders, Li Yi was the captain, while Wang Chao was the vice captain. For example, Li Yi was the prime minister, while Wang Chao was the general. One was in charge of civil affairs, while the other was in charge of military affairs. However, the prime minister's position was always higher than the general's. Boss, what is this military governor trying to do? He put Li Yi above our heads. Isn't he just making things difficult for us? One of Wang Chao's lackeys said in a bad mood. I thought this commander was a stubborn fool who only had a body full of superpowers. In the future, I can play with him however I want. I didn't expect him to be so vicious. He put Li Yi above my head. It's obvious that he's using Li Yi to monitor me and keep me in check. This Wang Chao still had some brains. He actually guessed Gohan's intentions. F*CK. Boss, why don't I find a chance to take that Li Yi? Another lackey made a gesture of rubbing his neck. Boss, there are monsters everywhere. As long as we do it discreetly, We can pretend that Li Yi was eaten by a monster. That military governor can't blame it on you. That's a good idea, but we can't do it now. Let's wait for Li Yi and the military governor to lower their guard. Wang Chao sneered. I understand. That military governor's abilities are all in that sword. If I can take that sword, then that superpower will be mine. Not to mention in Chao's restlessness, Guhan led the team towards the Hankow train station after they had finished their preparations. Although there were 120 people hidden in the Hankow train station, along the way, there were many survivors hiding in the buildings on the side of the road. Guhan, who was familiar with all the information, found these survivors one by one. Very quickly, the survivor team swelled from 117 to 143. Of course, quite a few Yuan silhouettes jumped out along the way. However, this was only a Treasure Sword tier basic instance dungeon for Treasure Sword tier sword wielders to train. No matter how strong the Yuan silhouettes inside were, they could not be that strong. Guhan easily destroyed these Yuan silhouettes. Fleeting time calendar and King Yu's eyes grew brighter and brighter. Finally, when Gahan and his team were resting halfway, King Yu quietly found Gahan and said to Gahan, Hey, swordman, can you teach me swordsmanship? Chapter 576. I'll teach you swordsmanship. Gahan was stunned. There was no such thing in the guide. There had never been a guide that said that Queen Yu would take the initiative to ask the sword wielder to learn swordsmanship. All the guides had at most interactions between players and the fleeting year calendar. There was almost no interaction with sword maidens like Queen Yu. Were there any hidden settings here? Gahan didn't know if it was the same as he guessed, but it shouldn't be a bad thing to teach Queen Yu swordsmanship. With this thought, Gahan started to guide Queen Yu. It wasn't that Queen Yu didn't know swordsmanship, but after she became the first sword maiden to awaken, she seemed to have forgotten her own swordsmanship. She had a strong foundation in swordsmanship, so under Gahan's guidance, Queen Yu's swordsmanship grew rapidly. In a short 10-minute break, Queen Yu, who was originally clumsy, improved rapidly under Gahan's guidance. Rather than Gahan's guidance, it was more accurate to say that she gradually recalled her own swordsmanship. Gahan's guidance seemed to coincide with Queen Yu's swordsmanship. Very quickly, Queen Yu's swordsmanship took shape. In the end, she didn't need Gahan's guidance and used a complete set of swordsmanship that originally belonged to her. Seeing this, Gahan felt like a dozen bombs exploded in his heart. He felt that it was unbelievable. This was because when King Yu used her own sword technique, Guhan was horrified to find that King Yu's sword technique was 70% similar to the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. Even though the other 30% was different, it was still an improvement on the foundation of the 9 swords of mysterious heaven. In other words, the swordsmanship in 9 swords of mysterious heaven was Queen Yu's original swordsmanship. However, later on, someone improved her swordsmanship and combined 9 different moves and mental cultivation methods to form 9 swords of mysterious heaven that Gahan knew. Queen Yu was actually the ancestor of Guhan's swordsmanship. How could this be? After understanding these things, Gahan fell silent. It was not that he had never taught him the king's surpassing sword technique. Although King Yu learned the sword technique very quickly, she never recalled the sword technique that originally belonged to her. Gahan only thought that there was a deviation in the sword technique memory of this fragment of consciousness, so he didn't think too much about it. He didn't expect there to be such a secret hidden inside. Could it be that when King Yu first split his sword maiden consciousness and entered the game, he was able to erase this portion of his sword art memory? Gahan continued to speculate, and before he knew it, the 10-minute break had already passed. Fleeting Calendar walked up to Gahan and asked, Military Governor, are we still going to rest? Oh no, let's go. Only then did Guhan wake up from his contemplation. He waved his hand and once again called for the team to move out and began to rescue the survivors in Hankow train station. There was nothing much to say about the operation. Guhan left Fleeting Calendar in charge of the safety of the survivors, while he charged into the train station to rescue the survivors. Originally, this quest required Guhan and Fleeting Year Calendar to enter the Hankow train station to rescue the survivors. The system had also set up many difficulties for the quest, as well as many traps that could lead to the deaths of the survivors. The survivors waiting outside of Hankow train station would also be ambushed by a wave of Yuanli attacks. Without the help of fleeting your calendar, most players would not be able to rescue the survivors from Hankow train station. However, these difficulties were nothing but a joke in the face of Gahan's unparalleled strength. Soon enough, the 120 survivors were rescued by Gahan. It took him less than 20 minutes to complete the mission, which was 4 times faster than the 1.5 hour that the strategy suggested. The survivors waiting outside of the train station were protected by fleeting calendar, so there were no casualties. Under the management of Li Yi and Wang Chao, these 120 people were successfully integrated into Guhan's group, and the entire group swelled by a whole circle. System notification: Quest 2 completed. The survivors at Hankow train station have joined the party. System notification: Main quest has been updated. Quest 3: Search the Eastern Modern Garden District. There are a total of 81 survivors hidden in the district. Please rescue them and convince them to join you and Kenzu's party. System notification: You have rescued a total of 263 survivors. The minimum requirement of 100 survivors has been met, and the dungeon has been evaluated as an A-rank dungeon. You can shout, "I'm leaving," to end the dungeon and return to the dungeon's completion center. You can also continue to challenge for higher achievements in the dungeon. Eastern Modern Garden District. Gahan glanced at the name. It was a normal camp, and there weren't any powerful Yuan messing around. However, there was still a bit of trouble. The 81 survivors were hidden in 22 different locations, and some of the locations were completely blocked off. The sword wielder was not an excavator, and even if the excavator was here, it wouldn't be easy to move these damned collapsed boulders. If a normal player wanted to rescue all 81 survivors, it would take at least 5 hours. Just saving these people would take up more than half of the time. Therefore, most of the strategies recommended that ordinary players only save a portion of the survivors that were the easiest to save. About 20 survivors were saved, and the rest of the survivors were left to fend for themselves. In any case, the SSS rating was only 500 people, so it didn't matter if they lost 50 or so survivors. Unfortunately, Gahan couldn't be lazy. These 50 survivors were enough to completely block him from entering the dungeon record. However, Gahan didn't want to waste 5 hours on this, so Gahan decided to find himself a helper. Yuhao, come here. Gahan suddenly called out Yuhao's name. Yuhao was stunned. He didn't know why Gahan was looking for him. Could it be that the military governor is trying to kill me because I'm always by fleeting your calendar's side? Yuhao, who had read many political novels, walked up to Gahan with trepidation. He looked at Gahan warily, wondering if Gahan was going to give him a mission that would definitely kill him. Do you want to become a sword wielder? Unexpectedly, Gahan actually asked a question that Yuhao had never even thought of. A sword wielder, a person with superpowers like you and fleeting year calendar. Yuhao's eyes glowed brightly, but soon dimmed. I'm not as capable as you and brother fleeting calendar. That's not necessarily true. Becoming a sword wielder doesn't depend on your ability, but your talent. Gahan smiled. Even a pig can become a sword wielder as long as it has talent. I can feel it. Your sword maiden is nearby. Follow me. After saying that, Gahan strode towards the commercial street not far away. Yuhao didn't hesitate and directly followed behind Gahan. He followed behind Gahan, passing through a store with its open doors and things scattered everywhere. Finally, he stopped in front of a store. Throw your Rems anime merchandise shop? Yuhao raised his head and saw a strange name. What are we doing here? Isn't this a place that sells toys? Yuhao asked in confusion. Don't ask. Follow me. Gahan led the way into the shop. Yuhao had no choice but to follow behind Gahan. This was a small anime merchandise store. The shelves were mainly filled with figurines. Most of them were Liam's figurines. Aside from these figurines, there were also various Liam costumes of various sizes on the other wall. At the most eye-catching spot on the wall was a very seductive Leimu cosplay photo. It was obvious that the shop owner had an unusual interest in Lemu. However, Rem was not Gahan's goal. Gahan's real target was a huge sword that shone with a metallic luster. The hilt was blue and red, but the blade was golden. "This is your sword, Maiden." Guhan picked up the huge sword. It looked heavy on the surface, but when he held it in his hand, it only weighed less than 5 kilograms. Even a child could easily swing this sword. "This is my sword, Maiden?" Yuhao looked at the huge golden sword in confusion. "Don't lie to me. I know how to cosplay as well. This is just a plastic sword. How can it be the same as Brother Fleeting Calendar's bronze sword?" "Who said Fleeting Calendar can't be a sword, Maiden?" Guhan placed the giant sword in front of Yuhao. The sword was still considered a giant sword in the hands of Guhan, who was about 1.8 meters tall. In front of Yuhao, who was only about 1.3 meters tall, it was even bigger. It looked more than twice as tall as Yuhao. "All right, I want it." Yuhao's heart started palpitating as he looked at the sword. Why aren't the military governor and the rest back yet? Fleeting Calendar and King Yu looked around nervously in case a monster suddenly jumped out and attacked them. "He's here. Captain Military Governor is out." King Yu's eyes were better than Fleeting Calendar's. He immediately saw Guhan walking out from the corner of the street. There were 2 people following behind the military governor. Yuhao's back as well. "Strange. Who's the little girl behind Yuhao?" Fleeting Calendar asked curiously. There was a girl who was shorter than Yuhao behind him. "Introduce her." Guhan walked up to Fleeting Calendar and pointed at the little girl. "She's Rui, Yuhao's sword maiden. From now on, Yuhao is a member of China's Dragon Group." Chapter 577. Rui's sword? Fleeting Year Calendar had more or less grasped the general knowledge of the sword maiden, so he immediately asked after hearing Rui's name. "No, it's missing a word." Gohan laughed. "To be more precise, she is the Rui Celestial Sword." Rui Celestial Sword, cleave in 2. Yuhao watched helplessly as Rui, who was a head smaller than him, swung the gigantic Rui Celestial Sword around to cleave the cement rubble into 2. She then jumped into the rubble and rescued the survivors who were hiding inside. This was the 60th survivor that Yuhao had rescued. Soon, all 81 survivors in the Eastern Modern Garden would be rescued. Did this military governor treat me as a laborer? That's why he helped me become a swordsman. Yuhao was in a bad mood as he watched Lin Huang leisurely standing there, directing the Rui scepter to move towards the next ruin where there were human survivors. Yuhao once again used clean cut. There was nothing to be suspicious about. Gahan was obviously treating Yuhao as a laborer. After all, Yuhao's sword maiden was the Rui Celestial Sword. Although Gahan's sword aura could also cleave the collapsed cement slabs, Gahan's sword aura was not free. Each use required 100 quarks of sword essence. In the real world, Guhan's sword essence was almost at the level of 15,000 quarks. However, in the game, Gahan's sword essence was only around 8,000 quarks. If he used sword aura, he could only use it 80 times. Compared to the ruins of the residential area, 80 sword auras was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. Moreover, if he used sword auras, he might hurt the humans in the ruins. Therefore, the Rui Celestial Sword, which was more adept at dealing with boulders, became a better cutting machine than Gahan. Cleave in 2 was only a basic skill of the Rui Celestial Sword. It only required 10 quarks of sword essence, which was 10 times less than Gohan's sword aura. Moreover, using cleave in 2 to cut boulders was gentler, like cutting tofu. It would not hurt the humans buried underground. Of course, the most important thing was there was no need to trouble Gahan with this laborious task. It would be much more comfortable to just leave it to an NPC. With Yuhao's efforts, the rescue work progressed very smoothly. The work that should have taken 5 hours only took less than half an hour, and it was almost over. Some readers wanted to ask, since there was such a useful tool NPC, were the players in the past all fools? Why not use this method? That was because this method was also Gahan's own creation. It was a byproduct of Gahan's research on the Yuwang Gojian Jian instance dungeon. In the past 200 years, Only Gahan had found this method and found the key NPC, Yu Hao. Yu Hao did not have any notable achievements in history. There were only a few words about him in the history books. Yu Hao from Wuhan. He was a swordsman of the famous sword level. He was one of Kinzu's assistants in his early years. He later died in the Battle of Yanjing City. That was all that the history books had to say about Yu Hao. Not many people paid attention to him. However, when Gahan was researching the Yu King Gojian instance dungeon, he noticed this person. It was not that Gahan felt that there was something special about Yu Hao. In order to find clues to break through the Yu King Gojian instance dungeon, Gahan had researched Kinzu's subordinates, especially those from Wuhan. Therefore, Gahan collected a lot of information about Yu Hao. He even specially read through Yu Hao's epitaph. Only then did he discover more clues about Yu Hao. It turned out that Yu Hao's swordswoman was the Wishful Sword. Moreover, this Wishful Sword was also found in Wuhan City. Therefore, Gahan went to look up the history books about the Wishful Sword. Only then did he know that the first owner of the Wishful Sword was indeed Yu Hao. He found it in a shop called Throw You Rem. However, Yu Hao did not become the sword wielder when he first met Kinzu. Instead, he followed Kinzu to set up a camp outside the city. 10 days later, when he sneaked back to Yuzhong City to collect food, he found a Wishful Sword and became the sword wielder. Thinking that the Wishful Sword would not be of much help to him in the Yu King Gojian instance dungeon, Gahan did not pay much attention to this sword wielder, called Yu Hao. He only remembered this information in his heart. This was a secret that Gahan had discovered by chance. The other players who were in the Wuhan Search Instance dungeon naturally would not have thought that the little fellow beside Kinzu was actually a sword wielder. Therefore, no one had found this simple trick until Gahan entered this instance dungeon and heard Yu Hao's name. That was when he found a Wishful Sword in the depths of his memory. "Are there any survivors, Captain Military Governor?" Yu Hao asked Gahan as he looked at the Oriental Modern Garden, which had been almost completely replaced by his Wishful Sword. "Yes, we're still missing 10 people. Gahan replied, "That's impossible. We've searched through all the Rui here. There's no other place to hide people." Yu Hao said, puzzled, "Come with me." Gahan jumped down from where he was standing and led Yu Hao to a flower bed in the residential area. He pointed at the flower bed and said, "There are still 10 people here. That's impossible. This is just a flower bed." Yu Hao still did not believe it. Gahan pursed his lips. He casually swung the heavenly sword in his hand and used a sword energy to split the entire flower bed open, revealing the underground space under the flower bed. "Is this an underground parking lot?" Yu Hao poked his head into the flower bed and found that it did not have the usual smell of rubber in underground parking lots. Instead, it was filled with the smell of metal. "This is an interesting place." Gahan took the lead and jumped into the hole. Yu Hao followed closely behind and jumped in as well. The space under the flower bed was indeed not a parking lot. Instead, it looked like an underground research institute with a sci-fi feel. All the walls were made of steel, and there were all kinds of equipment that Yu Hao could not name in various places. Unexpectedly, Yu Hao heard a loud roar. Being familiar with all kinds of FPS games, he immediately reacted and shouted, "Oh no, it's a submachine gun." He immediately dropped to the ground. 9 swords of Black Heaven, Sword of the Spring. Gahan extended the heavenly sword in his hand, and an umbrella-shaped sword energy shot out from the tip of the sword, blocking all the bullets. At the same time, he shouted, "Stop shooting. I'm a human, not those monsters." Hearing Gahan's words, the gunshots stopped. After a while, a rough man's voice came from the other side. "Brother over there, are you really a human? Have you ever seen a talking monster?" Gahan asked in a loud voice. "Then wait for me. I'm coming." Seeing that the battle was over, Yu Hao, who was panicking, crawled up from the ground. At that moment, the big man who had spoken walked over. The big man was wearing a well-ironed military uniform. Looking at his shoulder, there were 2 bars and 4 stars. He seemed to be an officer. However, his military uniform was covered in all kinds of dirt, and his face was covered in dirt. When he saw the sunlight shining through the hole, he couldn't help but squint his eyes. It seemed that he had stayed in this dark, underground space for a long time, which was why he was so uncomfortable with the sunlight. Dad! When he saw the man's face clearly, Yu Hao suddenly cried out in surprise and threw himself into the man's arms. My good son, why is it you? When Yu Hao's father saw Yu Hao, he was dumbfounded. In his mind, his precious son had probably died a long time ago. However, he never imagined that the son that he had yearned for day and night would actually jump out and appear in front of him. I really deserve to die. The man suddenly threw his gun to the ground and stomped on it. I almost killed my own son. Then, he hugged Yu Hao tightly and kissed him, causing Yu Hao's face to turn red. Suowei, what's the situation? Is it a human? In the darkness, another older voice came out. Dad, it's Little Hao. Your grandson Little Hao is here. Yu Suowei, Yu Hao's father, said excitedly. Listening to Yu Suowei's words, the old man who spoke was his father, Yu Hao's grandfather. Oh, Yu Hao's whole family was here. What? My precious grandson is here. The sound of footsteps could be heard as an old man who looked similar to Yu Hao ran out. He was also wearing a military uniform, and the insignia on his shoulder was a golden olive with 2 golden stars. Following behind the old man were 8 valiant soldiers in training uniforms. Each of them had a golden light in their eyes, strong arms, and an awe-inspiring aura. At first glance, one could tell that they were the king of soldiers in the army. Yu Mutian, Major General and Commander-in-Chief of China's Hubei Military District. Yu Suowei, Senior Colonel of China's Hubei Military District. These 2 people were Yu Hao's father and grandfather, and they were also the biggest obstacles to Gahan's mission. Because the military identity of the Yu family's grandfather and grandson was undoubtedly more reliable than Gu Han's government identity when the government was almost completely out of control. To put it bluntly, as long as these 3 people entered the survivor group, it was possible that Gu Han's prestige in the group would be taken away in an instant. Even the fleeting calendar might be on his side. If it was possible, Gahan didn't want to save these 10 people. He wanted to let them fend for themselves underground. It didn't matter if they died. However, Gahan had to save these 10 people. This was because this was the largest group of survivors in the dungeon. There were close to 200 survivors hiding in the Hubei Military District. Without the Yu family's grandfather and grandson, it would be impossible for them to join the survivors. Chapter 578. After getting intimate with his precious grandson, Yu Suowei turned his attention to Gahan. At the same time, 8 submachine guns were pointed at Gahan. If Gahan dared to make a move, these submachine guns would turn Gahan into a sieve. At least, that was what Yu Suowei and Yu Hao thought. Dad, Grandpa, what are you doing? Put down your guns. Yu Hao shouted when he saw this scene. He wasn't afraid of Gahan being killed. He was afraid that his grandfather and father would be killed by Gahan. He had seen Gahan's superpower before. Invulnerability was probably what Gahan looked like. Little Hao, you don't know how sinister people are in this world. This refuge is our military's top secret. Since he brought you here, he's definitely not an ordinary person. You have to be careful. Yu Suowei said with a righteous look on his face. No, it's really not like that. Dad, we are here to save someone. We just accidentally broke the flower bed. Yu Hao suddenly stopped talking. He remembered that it was Gahan who broke the flower bed. It was obvious that Gahan knew that there was someone under the flower bed. However, when he thought about it, it wasn't strange that Gahan knew about the flower bed. After all, Gahan was the leader of the China Dragon Group. He was a major general. It was normal for him to know the location of the refuge. Dad, Grandpa, don't be mistaken. The military governor is a soldier like us. He is a major general of the China Dragon Group. He is one of us. Yu Hao quickly explained. China Dragon Group? Major General of the China Dragon Group? Yu Suowei and Yu Mutian looked at each other in dismay. They had never heard of the China Dragon Group. Major General? Captain? Yu Suowei snorted in disdain and looked at Gu Han with disdain. Young man, it's smart to lie. How can a sloppy person like you be a Major General? Besides, I've never heard of a Major General Captain in the Army. Who are you? What do you do? And what are you trying to do? You better tell me now. leniency for those who confess, severity for those who resist. Do you understand? Yu Sowei, Yu Mu Tian, just because you haven't heard of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Gohan waved his hand. One of the soldiers felt his submachine gun disappear. It was in Gohan's hand, and the muzzle was pointed at Yu Mu Tian's head. Kid, what are you doing? How dare you attack a high-ranking official of China? Are you tired of living? Yu Sowei saw that his father was being pointed at, and he immediately panicked. Don't be nervous. I just feel that this gun is a little interesting. Gohan chuckled and returned the gun to the soldier. I just want to tell you that the situation has changed. Yuan Ko has invaded the world, and the State Council has ordered the Dragon Group to take over the country's security. Our Dragon Group is in charge now, so you should cooperate with us to maintain the stability of the country. Don't let the country fall into chaos. What the hell is this guy talking about? Isn't the Dragon Group trying to usurp the throne? Yu Sowei was about to order his men to arrest Gohan when Yu Mu Tian suddenly waved his hand. Comrade, I remember now. Our country does have a Dragon Group. It was established by the founding father of the country. However, it's been a long time, and I've forgotten about it. Yu Mu Tian smiled as he shook Gohan's hand. Comrade from the Dragon Team, can you tell us about the situation outside? What's wrong with this world? Who is this Yuan Ko that you're talking about? Why are they like phantoms? Even bullets can't penetrate them. Comrade, don't you know that hundreds of our brothers, soldiers, and comrades have died in the hands of these Yuan Ko? It's because of their protection that we're able to keep our lives. Yu Mu Tian's eyes started to tear up as he spoke. No one knew if he was really tearing up or if he was just putting on an act. However, sly old foxes like him weren't simple at all. However, this old man was probably faking it. The Dragon Group was just a random unit that Gohan had made up. This old man actually said that he had heard of it, and even said that it was established during the founding father of the country. Even Gohan was impressed by his ability to adapt to the situation. However, since this old man was willing to play along, things would be much easier. At the very least, he had to stabilize these 10 people and prevent them from causing any trouble. Senior Yu, the 2D Yuan Ko is currently attacking us humans. Their bodies are in between dimensions, so our normal attacks are unable to harm them. Only the sword bearers of the Dragon Group can fight against them. Gohan lied. The ancestors of the Dragon Group predicted this a long time ago, so we secretly formed the China Dragon Group with a founding father. We recruited people with the talent to become sword bearers into our Dragon Group. During peaceful times, the Dragon Group never revealed itself. However, now that the Yuan Ko has invaded, it's time for us to come out and protect the country and its people. Comrade, I'm honored to inform you that your grandson, Yu Hao, has discovered the talent to become a sword bearer. He has officially become a great sword bearer and has joined the Dragon Group. What? Little Hao, you've joined a swindler organization? Are you crazy? Yu Sowei still didn't believe Gohan's words and questioned his son. How about this, Comrade Yu Hao? Let Rui come in and show off your strength. Let your father and grandfather believe in the existence of the Dragon Group. Gohan patted Yu Hao's shoulder. Yu Hao nodded excitedly. After all, he was still a child. Being able to show off his superpower in front of his grandfather and father was an exciting thing no matter how one looked at it. So with a wave of his hand, a sword light flew into Yu Hao's hand. Then the Yu family's father and son saw their son, grandson, holding a sword inexplicably. They swore to the heavens that this sword had appeared out of nowhere and they hadn't seen it before. What happened next was even more magical. The sword suddenly released a blinding light and then turned into a short girl. She was still holding the huge sword in her hand. Is this magic? Yu Sowei muttered to himself in disbelief. Whether it is magic or not, you'll know soon enough. Gohan smiled and said to Yu Hao, let Rui cut down a part of the ceiling and use it as a ladder. Let your grandfather and father leave this place. It's no longer safe here. The second wave of Yuan Ko's attack will come at any time. Yes, under Yu Hao's command, Rui easily cut down a part of the ceiling and made a slope. When all 10 of them returned to the ground through the slope, They finally believed that there was a monster like Yuan Ko in this world. There was also a sword wielder who could fight against Yuan Ko. The heavens have pity on us. The heavens have not destroyed the human race. Yu Muqian sighed. At the beginning of the apocalypse, when he saw that the bullets couldn't hurt them at all, and that even the walls couldn't stop them from moving, Yu Muqian felt despair. He felt that the human race was about to go extinct. He didn't expect that the ancestors of the human race had already predicted this disaster. They had even organized the Dragon Group to fight against the Yuan Ko. Senior Yu, my goal is to bring all the human survivors to our Dragon Group's temporary camp in Mulan Mountain. That is a temporary camp that our Dragon Group has set up. It can effectively protect the humans from the threat of Yuan Yan. I wonder if Senior Yu would like to come with us? Or do you have something else to do? Gohan asked after the members of the Yu family got used to the sunlight outside. Of course. Together. Yu Muqian replied immediately. If he didn't follow Gohan, where else could he go? Was he looking to die? There are some things that I have to say in advance. If you join the Dragon Group, you will have to listen to all of my commands. Will this make things difficult for you? Gohan asked. Who do you think you are? What right do you have to? Yusuawei was stopped by Yu Muqian. No problem. I'm an old man now. I'm happy to be able to keep my life. There's nothing difficult about it. Military Governor, don't worry. We will listen to your commands. Yu Muqian said with a smile. That's good. Military Governor, I thank you for your understanding. Gohan smiled happily. Oh yes, I forgot to tell you that guns are useless against Yuan Ko. It would be bad if they accidentally fire in the middle of the crowd. Why don't you let me take care of them? It'll be safer that way. Gohan had to put away all the submachine guns. If he didn't take care of them well, the soldiers might start firing in the middle of the crowd. If that happened, it would be a huge loss to Gohan. You want our guns? That's impossible. That's impossible. Yu Suwei's father stopped him before he could finish his sentence. Suwei, and all of you, hand over your guns to the military governor. Let him take care of them for us. Yu Muqian ordered loudly. The soldiers looked at each other, then at Yu Suwei. They were all hesitant, not knowing what to do. To a soldier, a gun was their second life. How could they hand over their guns so easily? As a result, they didn't take action. This was Yu Muqian's plan. Even an old man like him was willing to give in, but his subordinates weren't willing to hand over their guns. That way, Yu Muqian wouldn't be able to force them. It was a pity that Yu Muqian was wrong. Gohan sneered, and the heavenly sword in his hand slashed downwards. In the next second, the weapons in the hands of the soldiers were all turned into scrap metal. An ancient sword hero was nothing more than this. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.